We are Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg, here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Stephen Jansen. This show is always live, broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park in Johannesburg. Now, of course, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. you can watch us live on our streaming facility on YouTube as well. You can watch us back later in the day at the same place on demand. Our question today, interesting one, school holidays really kick off today. We want to know from you. How do we keep alcohol? There we go. How do we keep alcohol off our roads this festive season? We're the biggest drink drivers on the planet. That's according to the UN's World Health Organization. So we want to know, what do you think? However, we've got a new face on the show this Monday morning. Alicia Jolly is here to give us a news update. Morning.
A very good morning, Eben, and a very good morning to our viewers at home. I'm Alicia Jolly. Let's quickly give you the headlines this morning. Top stories. Former President Nelson Mandela has been remembered as a selfless leader and tireless fighter for democracy, justice and equal rights for all, as the world marked the second anniversary of his passing over this weekend. Pick it up workers are expected to be back at work today following 2 weeks of strike action demanding better salaries. US President Barack Obama has warned against America being drawn into a long and costly ground war in the Middle East. All right, and Kendall. All right, it's time for Kendall to give us a quick update on the sports news this morning. Kendall, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and a very good morning to you. Welcome to Newsroom. Very good to have you here. And good morning to you at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. The Proteas have set off on a record-breaking spree, with captain Hashim Amla playing the slowest innings of 200 balls or more in the history of Test cricket as they look to block their way to a draw. And yet another year goes by and still no South African winner at Africa's major, the Nedbank Golf Challenge, since 2007, as Australian Leishman takes top honours. And disgruntled players from the EP Kings to hand over a petition to their employers demanding payment and a vote on the management team. That, in a nutshell, is what we've got for you in the sport. Back to you, Alicia.
Thank you so much, Kendall. Our top story, former President Nelson Mandela has been remembered as a selfless leader and tireless fighter for democracy, justice and equal rights for all. A special commemoration service was held at the St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town last night to mark the second anniversary of the death of the iconic leader.
Paying tribute to the late statesman, who described himself not as a saint, but an ordinary human being, a sinner who keeps on trying. Nelson Mandela's enormous contribution and dedication to justice and equality, an enduring legacy.
Today, and for generations to come, Madiba will be revered around the world as an inspirational symbol of peace and forgiveness, but also of justice, on which they must be based. He remains a beacon of hope for all those everywhere who are still fighting for their freedom and justice. On the international stage, the name Nelson Mandela is synonymous with the universal struggle for justice, human rights, freedom, and democracy, issues that resonate just as strongly today as they did when he walked from prison 25 years ago.
Madiba's old friend and fellow Nobel laureate, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, joined people from all walks of life in commemorating the second anniversary of Madiba's death. Archbishop Makgoba said while Madiba rarely expressed himself in religious terms, he has no doubt that Madiba searched not for perfection, but for union through other people with whoever he thought God to be. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town.
One person has been killed and 2 others injured after their vehicle collided with one of the trucks that had been burnt down by protesting community members in Steelpoort near Burgersfort in Limpopo last night. Community members from various villages in the area set alight more than 16 vehicles and blockaded the R555 road with rocks and burning tires. Residents embarked on a violent protest accusing the executive mayor of Sekhukhune district municipality of interfering with the employment and procurement processes at the mines. A few months ago, the then Mineral Resources Minister Ngwako Ramatlhodi had to intervene to end a violent protest that brought the operations in that area to a halt. Waste management company Pick It Up says it expects all its employees to be back at work today. Johannesburg residents have seen weeks of uncollected refuse after workers embarked on a strike to demand better salaries. Now, the strike ended after Gauteng Cooperative Governance MEC Jacob Mamabolo intervened and brokered a deal between the municipal union SAMU and management. Mamabolo says the intervention was necessary to ensure the well-being of the city's residents as well as the environment. To the States, U.S. President Barack Obama has warned against America being drawn into a long and costly ground war in the Middle East. Now, this comes after federal investigators shifted their probe towards terrorism in a deadly mass shooting in San Bernardino in California. 2 suspects were shot dead after they killed 14 people and wounded 21 others.
On Wednesday, 14 Americans were killed.
In a rare address from the Oval Office Sunday night, U.S. President Barack Obama worked to reassure Americans that his administration is doing all it can to reduce the risk of militant attacks after a couple in California carried out what he called a, quote, new phase of terrorism.
So this was an act of terrorism designed to kill innocent people.
His address comes as mourning continues for 14 people killed by assault-style rifles in San Bernardino, California, and just weeks after 130 people were killed in a series of attacks in Paris. Obama vowed to target Islamic State.
The threat from terrorism is real, but we will overcome it. We will destroy ISIL and any other organization that tries to harm us. Our success won't depend on tough talk or abandoning our values or giving in to fear.
He said that he would not be sending ground troops into the fight.
We should not be drawn once more into a long and costly ground war in Iraq or Syria. That's what groups like ISIL want.
Obama's address comes amid growing pressure from Republicans and even some Democrats for a tougher response to Islamic State. Now that the San Bernardino shootings have raised fears among Americans about the threat of more attacks at home.
All right, I now hand over to Mr. Eben Jansen for in-depth interviews and analysis. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alicia. Yes, South Africa's deadly roads have already started to claim the lives of road users as the festive season only just gets underway today. In Harding, in the south coast of KwaZulu-Natal, 4 police officers were killed in a road accident. The Crime Intelligence Gathering Unit members were on duty when their light motor vehicle collided with a minibus taxi on the N2. 10 other people were injured. 8 people were also killed in the Eastern Cape. 4 in Limpopo and 3 more in Cape Town over the weekend. While the carnage continues on the road, South Africa has once more made a commitment to the United Nations and the World Health Organization to ensure safety on our roads. This includes road safety campaigns that are done by different organizations throughout the festive season. Now, for more on this, we are joined this morning by Andy Visser, who's the marketing manager of the N3 toll concession, and then Lawrence Barrett is with her. He is a coordinator at Stay Alert, Stay Alive. Very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Evan.
And if I can start with you, we see the campaigns. I want to talk about drink driving off the bat because that's the big problem. The World Health Organization last week issued a report saying we are the worst offenders when it comes to drink driving on the roads. How do we come to terms with that? We're also asking our viewers this question today. How do we come to terms with that?
I think first and foremost, every person should be responsible for their actions. We are each accountable for what we choose to do in our lives. But I think as a as the concessionaire responsible for the N3 between Joburg and Durban, I think for us the focus is on working with law enforcement, making sure that the law enforcement agencies are equipped to handle drunk driving or driving under the influence. We have in fact assisted the law enforcement authorities to get live-lock equipment on board and with the training to equip them to actually run drunk driving testing and driving under the influence of testing right through this December period and ongoing, not just now.
Yeah, that's another discussion. But Lawrence, while we're on the point of drink driving, it's a massive problem for everyone in South Africa. But it's not only behind the wheel. We have a lot of pedestrians that die, and large percentage of pedestrians that are also killed in South Africa are under the influence of alcohol.
Correct. The World Health Organization estimates that 58% of the deaths on South Africa's roads, and remember deaths on South Africa's roads, that includes also other road users other than drivers of motor vehicles, are under the influence of some form of alcohol. Now, if you consider that a third of those killed on South Africa's roads are pedestrians and not in the vehicle at all, one sees how enormous the problem is. Another estimate, and this is a South African estimate, is that 80% of the pedestrians killed on South Africa's roads were under the influence of alcohol, staggering onto the road, doing things on the road they wouldn't have done if they wouldn't have been under the influence of alcohol.
Just give us a quick, Andy, quick update as to the start of the festive season. It really started this weekend, when we think after the schools closed on Friday on the N3, which is normally the busiest road in the country. How have we kicked it off so far?
You know, we always say one crash is one too many. So for us, the benchmark is pretty high. It has been fairly good since Friday. We haven't had anything too major. We have had some minor incidents on the N3, but nothing of major catastrophic situation at this stage. But we are all on full alert and monitoring it as we go forward, particularly as we head into this week.
Well, that's fantastic to hear that the start's been very quiet on our busiest road. But Lawrence, you can tell us something about drunk buster goggles, I understand. Please tell me about this while we're on the trail of drink driving.
Right. Well, what we've done is that we have used the American concept of drunk buster goggles, which is specifically engineered to make it so that when you put it on your face, your eyesight becomes under the influence of alcohol, but not because of alcohol, because of the actual nature of the instrument that you're wearing. Now, the rest of your body remains sober. So what now happens is that you can see exactly what happens to you when you're under the influence of alcohol.
Yeah.
People who have been part of our experiments with the drunk buster goggles, in which we had further experiments in September this year, will all tell you one thing. I will never again do anything with any mechanical object, including a motor vehicle, if I've had something to drink, because I can see how it now affects my eyesight without me realizing it when I am under the real influence of alcohol, because the rest of my body becomes retarded to the same degree as my eyesight. But now it doesn't, of course.
Yeah.
So you actually perceive exactly what will happen to you or has happened to you when you're under the influence.
Absolutely, I think that's a fantastic initiative. If you can have a sober view of what it is like when you have a drink and you're behind the wheel. But Andy, here we see pictures, of course, that are all too familiar to all of us here in South Africa. We had an incident last week where 19 people died in a taxi crash here in Gauteng. But tell us about your campaigns on the N3 and how effective do you think these campaigns are? People always criticize the campaigns. They say, oh, these campaigns, they're there every year, and now they're throughout the year, but people still continue to die on the roads and in the same sort of numbers. It would be much worse if there weren't these campaigns, would it?
I think awareness is the most important thing, and I think the more we continue to make people aware of the situation and what is going on out there, the better chance we have of making a difference. I think in terms of our campaigns, it's around partnerships. We like to partner with like-minded organizations, you know, the likes of Imperial Road Safety. We partner with community medical services, and then, of course, all the law enforcement and emergency services along the route. Of vital importance is making sure that everybody is working together, working hand in hand, making sure that it is safe. And so our campaigns are centered around, obviously, not driving under the influence, but beyond that, you know, texting while driving is equally dangerous.
Yes.
Fatigue is even more dangerous. In fact, fatigue and driving under the influence are pretty much very closely aligned. So there are a number of campaigns that we run around these kinds of issues and making sure that, and really trying to encourage motorists to take regular breaks, plan their trips, and, you know, perhaps not race down the road, you know, take it easy.
We're all in a hurry here from Joburg to get to our holiday and then rush through it and rush right back. That's how we do it here in Johannesburg. But Lawrence, if you could wrap up this discussion. We see here on screen now the most dangerous roads in South Africa during this time. People that will be travelling on these roads, what kind of advice are you going to give them? Firstly, they should be aware that these roads are quite notorious, shouldn't they?
Definitely. The bit of advice that we would like to give at this particular stage is very, very simple. Obviously, never ever drink and drive, or never ever drink and be on the road. It doesn't matter whether you're a pedestrian driver. But the biggest piece of advice that we can give is that every driver must make sure that he is buckled up and that all his people in his car, whether they're the front seat passenger or the back seat passengers or the baby in the vehicle, are buckled up. It's amazing, if I have to tell you these figures which have been proved worldwide, the chances of being killed in a motor vehicle when you are not buckled up is increased by 40%.
Yeah.
The chances of having a serious injury, if not buckled up, is increased by 45%. So in different words, in order to make sure that you and your passengers in the vehicle are safe, please buckle up. This is essential for all drivers to make sure, because it's not the driver himself that's in the most danger. Remember, he's got a steering wheel which he can hold. The front seat passenger's got nothing to hold in the instance of a crash goes through the window. The back seat passengers go flying into the front seat passengers.
Absolutely.
Front seat passenger and the front seat driver, of course.
And often they get flung out of the vehicles even, and then you've got no chance. But I thank you very much for joining us today. Andy Visser is the marketing manager of the N3 toll concession, and Lawrence Barrett is the coordinator at Stay Alert, Stay Alive. And that's the message this festive season. Let's stay alert and alive, and stay alive on our roads. Now, I can take you back to those dangerous roads quickly. The Transport Minister, Dipuo Peters, has warned that light passenger vehicles contributed the highest number of fatal crashes in the 2014-15 financial year, with a figure at 47% of all road deaths. Minibus taxis were responsible for 7% of road deaths. The department says drunk driving remains one of the main contributing factors to these crashes. But here are the most deadliest roads in the country during the festive season. They're the N12 from Springs to Witbank, the N2 from Durban to Tongaat, N4 from Middelburg to Belfast, the N1 from Polokwane to Machado and back, and the N2 from Mthatha to Kokstad, whereas the N2 from East London to Mthatha itself is seen as a very dangerous stretch of road. So if you are traveling there this year, please be aware that these roads are notorious. Some of them, even some of the main roads there, are not in the best of condition as well. Now I can move on. According to the annual report for this year, that's 2014-15, released by the Road Traffic Management Corporation, more than 4,500 people died on South Africa's roads. Corruption within the traffic enforcement fraternity plays a big part in the number of road deaths, as officials, they say, are more likely to accept bribes during the festive season. The effect of this type of corruption is a massive loss to the state's revenue. Effective traffic enforcement is the most important requirement for road safety, according to the Justice Project of South Africa. This after a statement by the Tshwane Metro Police Department head Stephen Gobeni, which implied that there was no formula for reducing road fatalities. Now, this is the carnage counter, and you can look at the numbers for this year thus far. But to tell us a little bit more about how they view this scourge on our roads, Howard Dubowski, he's the national chairperson of the Justice Project South Africa. Very good morning to you, Howard. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Evan, and good morning to the viewers.
Howard, just give us quickly your view on the statement that's been released by the Tshwane Metro Police Department head that said there was no formula for reducing road fatalities. How do you view that?
Well, for a road traffic management and law enforcement agency to say that there is no formula is probably the most frightening thing, but it's also one of the most revealing things that they could do. The fact is that there are definitely formulas, and those formulas have been practiced worldwide and are parts of best practices. And there is absolutely no doubt about the fact that people will drive as badly as the authorities allow them to drive. The law enforcement agencies have a very, very crucial role to play in reducing road deaths by enforcing our traffic laws, not just over the festive season or at Easter, etc., but all year round, to instill a discipline of complying with road traffic laws, because it is the claim of the RTMC that more than 90% of all fatal crashes are preceded by a road traffic offence. It therefore stands to reason that if you reduce road traffic offences, you're going to reduce deaths. So hopefully that kind of message will get across, but obviously not whilst we have a chief of police saying that there's no formula.
You mentioned that crashes are almost always preceded by misbehavior on the roads, if we can call it that. We can't have a traffic officer every 2 kilometers on the roads in South Africa. What do you put forward as a solution then, Howard?
Well, the fact is that it's an unfortunate thing that behavior is learned, and bad habits tend to form over repeated behavior, and then it just becomes a habit, and that's what you do all the time. If we have a look at the high proportion of head-on collisions that take place, for example, there's no doubt about it that a head-on collision is either preceded by a road traffic offence or it is preceded by what we like to call bravado, or that person thinking, you know what, I can beat the odds. Well, people need to be shown that, first off, when there's a solid line down the center of the road, that means you can't overtake. And if you do overtake, then you must be taken to task if there's a traffic cop there. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with all of the sentiment that we cannot have a traffic cop per driver in this country. It's just not possible. But at the end of the day, if you do not enforce traffic laws properly, 365 days a year, it is rather unreasonable to expect to suddenly behave themselves at Christmas.
Howard, is it time for municipalities in general to move away from the thinking that traffic law enforcement is a revenue stream, and we should maybe change that constitutional mandate to one of thinking more of saving lives?
Well, most certainly. You know, if we have a look at the primary focus of a lot of these law enforcement agencies, you'll see that most of what they actually do is plonk speed cameras at the side of the road. They don't stop the persons who are actually speeding. What they do is they send them a fine in the post on a pay-as-you-go system to say, well, if you pay us our fine money, you can continue speeding. Now, that's not a mentality that we should be adopting in a democratic society. What we should be doing is we should be looking very definitely at reducing road carnage, and we should actually be holding every single one of those 241 municipalities and the 8 metros and the 9 provincial authorities accountable for actually reducing these things. And we should stop making up statistics. Let's actually just face it. We have not had road death statistics in South Africa since 2011. That was for the 2010-2011 financial year. So I have absolutely no idea where the Minister of Transport and her agencies are actually getting this information that they're feeding to the United Nations and to us with respect to road death statistics from any time after the end of 2010.
Howard, I thank you very much for joining us today. That is the chairperson of Justice Project South Africa, Howard Dembowski, talking to us about road deaths and law enforcement on our roads, not just now, but throughout the entire year. Now, I can tell you, Angry still put Protesters in Limpopo have set alight more than 16 vehicles. They've also blocked the R555 with rocks and burning tyres. Now, the residents embarked on this violent protest, accusing the executive mayor of the Sekhukhune district municipality of interfering with employment and procurement processes at the mines there. We showed you the pictures a little bit earlier, but let's have a look at some of the views on social media, what people have been talking about now. Patney talks about 16 vehicles were set alight by protesters, accusing the mayor for being biased on employment in mines at Steelput next to Burgersfort. There you see pictures of the blaze. Walter Tsepo talks about Steelput again. They are on strike. Ish, he says. That's a sentiment there. You have a picture of a truck that's just been set on fire by angry protesters there. Ushabeng Morris talks about what is the use of burning Steelput? Why, guys, don't you sit and talk about this? Ushabeng, maybe they feel it's easier or it's quicker to get results if you burn stuff, Ushabeng. Now, our picture of the day. This one comes from the Arrive Alive campaign, and it's captioned Steelput Burgersfort area R555 ghost town after what happened there yesterday. Yes, an absolute shocker. 16 vehicles were set alight. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the world. We'll start in Europe, where the Times reports that the Environment Agency is having to review its flood defences after a deluge from Storm Desmond overwhelmed new multi-million-pound barriers and left a trail of devastation across Cumbria. Then, International New York Times says President Obama sought to calm a jittery public after the terrorist attack last week in California, but he warned against sacrificing the nation's values out of fear. Then, here on the African continent, the Vanguard reports that a special team raised by the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to probe the payment of $2.2 billion in arms contract deal. The office of the former National Security Advisor yesterday confronted the major suspects with evidence of their illicit transactions. Time for us to take a quick break here on Newsroom. We'll be back right after this.
We kick off this week's show by seeing how Kenyans are paying tribute to the victims, as well as not only how they've coped, but how they returned stronger after the attacks.
Last year, images of the 4-day Westgate Mall attack saturated front pages.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, artists have assembled to celebrate the peace this war-torn country has not had in a long time.
No conflict that can't be solved without a conversation.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top-quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back here at Newsroom. We're looking at, well, the festive season traffic scenario. Now, the end of year is upon us, and it's that time when, well, it involves a lot of travelling and commuting for some of those who don't have cars. The focus once more falls on the taxi industry. Now, following a taxi crash last week that claimed the lives of 19 people, the accident occurred on the R28 between Western Area and Vereeniging. It's believed that the taxi was overloaded, had a tyre failure. The driver lost control and collided with a truck before bursting into flames. 5 other people were taken to hospital, 2 seriously injured. They were airlifted to hospital and 3 escaped with only slight injuries. Now, to talk to us on this issue of safety while travelling with a taxi or taxi travel in general over this time, we have Santaco's Chief Strategic Manager, Mr. Bafana Magagula. Very good morning to you, Mr. Magagula. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben, and thank you for giving us an opportunity.
You know, the taxi industry always come into focus at this time of the year, but even more so this year, because right at the sort of end of the year, we saw this horrific crash outside Western area. 19 people were killed on the spot. There were allegedly almost 24, 25 people in the vehicle. Just give us your reaction to that kind of thing.
Look, we are disappointed in the first place, and we need to apologize to the public who experienced that difficulty. We discourage overloading, and we appeal to our drivers to refrain from doing so. We also appeal to the passengers to make sure that they are not overloaded in any vehicle. And I think this is what we say every day to avoid such situations, because that tire burst definitely could have been as a result of the overloading.
Yeah, these kinds of images are all too familiar. There we have almost 30 people being crammed into a vehicle. It really sets the wrong example, but it's also very, very dangerous. I know that you've been running Operation Tlhokomela for the last couple of years, really, and it's geared towards helping taxi drivers understand their responsibilities also a little bit. Tell us about Tlhokomela, but also what are you doing specifically this festive season?
Look, we will continue with, strengthening our Tlhokomela program. We have approximately 57 vehicles across the country, which I can break them down at a later stage if you want to. We want to enhance our operation in terms of conscientizing, continue to conscientize. But what we do different now is that the president of Santaco, Mr. Philip Taibosh, has taken a stance now to want to talk direct to the driver. We've been talking to the commuters, we've been talking to the owners themselves, but maybe we've now realized that we need to directly now speak to the drivers and see if that may not bring some changes in their behavior.
Yeah, that's at the heart of it. It's about training the drivers to understand their role. Their role is very much public relations and that of a service provider. And the days of screaming and swearing at people within the taxi industry, those days should be behind us.
Yeah. Look, we have embarked on a program with RTMC in the new year. We will definitely be going from one province to another, making sure that we now directly speak to taxi drivers from one province to another. Yeah. And also we want to train the Tlhokomela champions. Tlhokomela champions are the people who run the program itself. Yeah. We want them to be trained at traffic colleges, not necessarily to be traffic officers, but to be road safety officers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we see an alleged assault that happened in a taxi, and it's exactly this kind of behavior that you're talking about that we need to clamp down upon. The one thing that concerns me, though, is the state of taxis, unroadworthiness, and taxis that are failing. Really, how are you coming to terms with dealing with unroadworthy vehicles on the road?
Look, when we are at the taxi rank or when we are on the road, we definitely, using our Tlhokomela program, we definitely take any taxi that is unroadworthy. We will take it off, even if we meet it halfway between its destination, and call upon the nearest association to come and take the passengers to their final destination. We've done it in the past, and we continue to do it. And we continue also to make this appeal and a call to all our taxi operators to please refrain from using unroadworthy vehicles.
In conclusion, those passengers that are going to travel on a taxi this festive season, just tell them what are their rights, and tell us how do we get people to understand their rights a little bit, and how they can maybe get into contact with you.
Look, as a passenger, it is your right to refuse from being transported into an already overloaded vehicle. It is your right to refuse to be taken into an unroadworthy vehicle. It is difficult to identify a roadworthy or an unroadworthy vehicle. However, if you look at the tires, I'm sure commuters, some of them knows vehicles, but they need also to know that they do have a right to even demand to see the driver who is driving them if he qualifies to drive them. Look, we also advise them that they must exercise their right. Look, there's 15 of them in one vehicle, and they allow the driver to speed with them even when they see that he's overtaking on barrier lines. They've got the right to stop that driver and save their lives.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us from Santako this morning, Mr. Bafana Magagula, telling us about what the rights are that you have when you're in public transport. Also, of course, Operation Tlogomela is ongoing, and they will make sure that they crack down on the behavior of especially drivers this festive season. Thank you for joining us, sir.
You're welcome.
Now, of course, the Gauteng province has the reputation for being home to the country's most dangerous drivers, and South Africa's mortuary statistics state that a person is more likely to be killed in a car crash than from being shot here in Gauteng. Can you believe that? Meanwhile, Limpopo, Mpumalanga and the Free State produce the highest number of road fatalities during the Easter period. Can you believe it? Now, the picture, well, the graphic on screen shows you the provinces with the most road fatalities during the festive season in South Africa. Every 12 minutes, someone dies in a motor vehicle crash, and every 5 seconds, a crash happens here in South Africa. The Automobile Association of South Africa estimates that the cost to the country's economy from road crashes is around 52 billion rand a year. Every day, more than 40 people die in road crashes, and 25 people end up permanently in wheelchairs due to road crashes. And the cost to the economy, loss of life, skills, and human capital is simply too great for us to ignore. The AA has taken the initiative to provide guidelines and recommendations on how companies can implement road safety programs in the workplace. Now, AA spokesperson Leighton Beard joins us in our studios in Pretoria to talk about road safety during the festive season. Very good morning to you, Leighton. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Leighton, do we care enough in South Africa that so many people are dying on our roads?
I think we do care. I think there are a lot of people in the country who do care about the fatalities and the injuries on the road. But I'll take you back to something that Lawrence said earlier. He used the word estimates quite a number of times in his interview with you. And I think that's part of the problem, Eben. We, unfortunately, in South Africa don't have reliable statistics to base any campaigns on, or to base the success of any campaigns on. The last reliable statistics we have are from 2011. And even in the World Health Organization's global report on road safety, South Africa had the most outdated road fatality statistics of 180 countries surveyed by the WHO. So I think it's very important for us as a country to go back to the basics and to say this is exactly how many people are dying on our roads. This is exactly how many people are injured on our road. These are the exact numbers of crashes that happen on our road over a given period, because that will give us an idea of where the trouble areas are, where more interventions are needed. So that's definitely something. We do believe that people do care, but I think that there are too many people who don't care, specifically motorists, who don't exercise enough caution, who don't buckle up, who don't make sure that they are driving safe on the road, and that is, of course, a major concern.
You touched on the WHO report there, Leighton. I want to just quickly talk about that report. It calls us the worst drink driving offenders in the world. How do you at the AA view that, and how do we improve that?
Yeah, drinking and driving is always a problem, and it's been a major problem in South Africa for a number of years. So the message, I think, is not to not drink and drive, it's to drink or drive. There are very many different organizations out there that offer you support in terms of if you are at a place and you are drinking, if you want to get home safely, you can make use of them. Taxi services, the AA has its own product called AA Designated Driver, where somebody will come to where you're drinking, they will pick you up in your own vehicle, they will take you home, but people don't use these services. So that's obviously a concern. Drinking and driving, unfortunately, is still socially acceptable in South Africa. That's one area that is of concern, where people say, I'm just going out for a couple of drinks, I'll be fine, I live 5 minutes away from where I'm drinking, or I'll drink coffee, or I'll have a couple of these energy drinks, or whatever the case is. The only thing that gets alcohol out of your system is time. Nothing else will get it out of your system. So that's very important. Some people don't believe that, and unfortunately, we see the results of that. I think, Eben, the other thing that we need to be very careful about is that there isn't enough effective law enforcement on the roads to deal with this issue of people who are drinking and driving. And if you combine that with the message of drink or drive, driving under the influence of alcohol is extremely dangerous, sending that message out, and then backing that up with some very effective law enforcement in all provinces, and not only over the festive season, I think you will see some results coming through. Again, obviously, we will need to measure that with some real statistics that come through from government.
Quickly, Leighton, just give us an overview of the cost road. You guys at the AA, what you telling us, the cost to our economy, how bad is that picture?
It's very bad, and I think people don't seem to realize the fact that if there is a crash and people need to be taken to a hospital and to mortuaries, and people need to get care after that, there is a huge cost to the economy. Add to that the fact that not every car in South Africa has insurance, which is also a problem, and that we don't have compulsory third-party insurance in South Africa. It places an enormous burden on the road accident fund, and people like you and me and everybody else in South Africa contribute to the road accident fund. So the cost to the economy of these crashes and not dealing effectively with them runs into the billions, and that definitely is something that needs to be looked at.
Leighton, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, the AA is working closely with all other stakeholders to keep us, or to get our roads a little bit safer this festive season. That was Leighton Beard. He came to us live from Pretoria. Let's take a look at some more information now on road accidents. Road accidents are the largest cause of injury-related deaths here. They are also the leading cause of injury-related deaths of under 5-year-old children in South Africa. So yes, we are even putting our children at risk. Tens of thousands of homes are without power now after Storm Desmond caused severe flooding and travel disruptions in Cumbria in the northwest of England. Global warming is with us. Let's take a look at some of the tweets and some of the pictures coming out of there. Very interesting there. You see a picture. That's the northwest of England, flooded very much like in India. I wasn't affected by floods. Heading to work is normal. Feels wrong somehow. Going to donate something and take to home base. There you have a picture of the wider Cumbria. Cumbria police image, Warwick Road, Carlisle. That was over the weekend. Cumbria flood, Storm Desmond hitting northwest of England hard. Can you see that picture? Cars totally submerged. Brian in Hawaii says, truly devastating. Praying everyone gets through this safely. Talking about the Cumbria floods. Yes, it is very, very concerning. Let's take a look at what is happening around the country here in South Africa. We'll start in Port Elizabeth, where 5 deaf learners accused of killing the deputy president at the Ifata School for the Blind and Deaf are expected to appear in the Mthatha Magistrates Court for a formal bail hearing today. They all face a charge of murder. Then, in the Eastern Cape, police have arrested a man for the alleged rape of a 5-year-old boy in Willowvale. That happened on Friday of last week. The suspect is expected to appear in the Willowvale Magistrates Court today. Now let's move on and just have a quick look at what's happening on our Newsroom Facebook page. In a rare primetime speech from the Oval Office, US President Barack Obama has warned against the country being drawn into a long and costly ground war in the Middle East. The president's White House address comes after a federal investigation shifted their probe towards terrorism in a deadly mass shooting in San Bernardino, California, that left 2 suspects dead after they killed 14 people and injured 21. Then the Central African Republic government dubbed a Seleka rebel leader enemy number one over the weekend in a move likely to further complicate the chances of ending the current wave of political turmoil there. The majority Christian country has been embroiled in a violent crisis since early 2013 when mainly Muslim Seleka rebels seized power in a coup before ceding power to a transitional government after strong international pressure. Finally, President Jacob Zuma has defended China's decision to craft trade and investment ties with Africa. During the China-Africa Leaders Summit in Santa, north of Johannesburg last week, China pledged to invest $60 billion over the next 3 years to fund various infrastructure development projects across the continent. All of those stories and more on our Facebook page. Time now for us to take a break. When we come back, we have a look at drink driving and its effects. Our question is, how can South Africa keep alcohol off its roads this festive season? What are your views? After a short break.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top-quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Are you saying the king must go to jail? You are not royal blood, therefore you are going to serve time on behalf of the king. Where does the public protector stand on this matter? Are you with the marches, for the marches, against the march? If this is your ancestor, it is very much his ancestor as well, because this is the cradle of humankind. Is there God somewhere in your science? Drinking the blood of a person with albinism gives extra magical powers. A man of the cloth is involved here because it would mean that somehow religion is being brought into this part of the myth. What do you say to that?
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tseju, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News channel.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. Now, the World Health Organization says South Africa tops the list of drunk driving-related deaths in the world. The latest global status report on road safety for 2015 revealed that 58% of deaths are alcohol-related. We spoke to them last week. This is what they had to say.
Well, the report shows us that the road safety situation is bad around the world. We need to do more. Somehow we have arrived at a situation where we have a transportation system that kills 1,250,000 people every year and injures up to 50 million. It's a huge toll in terms of human life and also economic costs. And we're just accepting it without suddenly shaking up and saying we have to do something about this.
Drink driving. 58% of all road deaths are alcohol-related, in South Africa now. In Durban, I have to say, is the founder and director of South Africans Against Drink Driving, Cara Smith. A very good morning to you, Cara Smith. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
And then here in Johannesburg with me is the head of alcohol policy at South African Brewers, Bongamusa Makatini. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Bongamusa, thanks for joining us. If I can start with you, Caro, are you surprised by the World Health Organization's report last week that fingered South Africans as the worst drink drivers?
No, I'm not surprised at all, because we are still not testing people for alcohol enough. We need to test morning, noon and night, 365 days of the year. And I have just come back from Brasilia, where I was meeting with Dr. Etienne Krug. And what he really asked, he asked that the government work with NGOs like SAD so that we can help them develop policies and implement the plans on how to change this. But the most important thing is enforcement, because people will drink and drive if they are allowed to, and at the moment they're allowed to.
Now, I'm joined here by Bonga Musa from SAB, and you coming up with quite an original take this festive season. You're partnering with Uber to try and be more responsible about drinking and driving. Tell us about this campaign and what have led you to this place.
Thank you for having me. The key about this campaign, we've realized that there's quite a number of people that end up causing accidents on the road. About 58% of South Africans' road crashes are associated or are related to alcohol. So as a result of that, as SAB, we felt it's necessary for us to come up with an intervention to remove these drunk drivers from the road to try and improve the situation in our roads. And why SAB really, as one of the biggest brewer in the world, we have to play our role and make sure that we keep South Africans safe.
Cora, what is your response to this campaign by business to take some responsibility for what happens?
I think it's very brave, and we really compliment SAB on it. But, you know, many people do not have the access to Uber. They're not in the urban areas. They're in areas where there isn't something like Uber. So we need to look far beyond that. So that's where the traffic officers and the police need to come in terms of they should all have breathalyzers in their vehicles. And they need to see drink driving as a serious crime it is. Very often they tend to say we've got more serious things to deal with, and it is an extremely serious crime that's costing our country nearly 200 billion a year. So we're asking for testing, and we're asking that the NPA and Department of Transport get the evidential breathalyzer back on board very quickly.
Now, Bonga Musa, what's your take? Government's proposing to make liquor traders, manufacturers and distributors legally liable in the future for some of the harm and damage caused by people who consume too much. How do you take that on board? What do you think of it?
As SAB, we believe that people should be responsible when they drink alcohol. And we are of the view that, just to add to what Carol is saying, that we need to bring back alcohol evidence centers back in operation. Because if South Africans know that when they drink irresponsible, the chances of them getting caught and being prosecuted successfully, it will help reduce and change behavior. In terms of holding manufacturers liable for what goes around around our streets and in the societies where we live, it's going to be very hard, because at the end of the day, how do you hold a manufacturer accountable without necessarily holding individuals responsible for their own actions? That's what we should be driving. We should be getting people to be more responsible and understand that whatever action they do has got consequences.
Absolutely. I want to quickly talk to you, Cara, about our risky drinking patterns that we have in South Africa. We're the worst binge drinkers in the world and the 4th largest consumers of alcohol per capita in the world. How do we change the way that we engage in this risky behavior?
I think people need to know that one can have a good time without being drunk. One can drink a little bit and have a good time, and there's certain rules, safety rules. For example, drinking 1 unit per hour. And so if people change that, the whole thing about drinking for fun as opposed to getting drunk. So to change that culture, friends and family have to look at people who drunk and talk to them and say, this is unacceptable. It's not the way we should behave, because it's causing too many problems, too much domestic violence, too many car crashes, too many rapes, too much. Behind most of the crimes in South Africa is alcohol abuse. So it has to come from families, businesses, everybody. We've got to say it's not acceptable to be drunk. It's acceptable to drink as long as you don't drink and drive, as long as you're not pregnant or underage. So that's why we believe what SAB is doing. They're funding our university project. We thank them for that, because it's important to teach people that it's okay to drink, but it must be responsibly. So especially it doesn't hurt your body, and that turns you into an alcoholic.
Cara, thank you very much for joining us. Bonga, you've got 30 seconds to give people advice with regards from you guys to the viewing public there. What should they be thinking about this holiday season?
I think from an SAB perspective, it is responsible for our consumers to consume our product responsible and to make sure that at the end of the day, they don't cause harm to innocent South Africans.
Thank you very much. That's where we will leave it with regards to the drinking. Yes, have a drink, but don't let your drinking affect other people's lives. Stay alert, stay alive on the roads. That's the message here today. Now, let's take a quick look at some of the busiest towns in South Africa during the festive season. Of course, scores of people are expected to flock to some of these towns for their holidays. All travellers are cautioned to be extra vigilant and careful when driving through these destinations, even through them. Colesberg, Marloth Park and Zerwinsie near the Kruger Park, Clarence, Graaff-Reinet, Oudtshoorn, Bella, St. Lucia, Hazy View near the Kruger Park, Plettenberg Bay, and of course Ponta Douro and the south of Mozambique. That's also going to be very busy. There's Gharib Dam, Three Sisters, the Karoo stopovers along the N1, Port Alfred, Wilderness, Gordons Bay, Franschhoek, Blouberg Strand, and Hoedspruit. These are all the busiest towns during the festive season. So keep an eye on the prize. Make sure that we come back in the new year alive and alert. This is our question of the day. How can South Africa keep alcohol off its roads this festive season? That's what we would like you to tell us. It's a communal problem we have in South Africa. Time now for us to take a look at what the weather has in store.
now 10:00 hours. This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Alicia Jali. Now this show is live and broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park, and we're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Let's take a quick look at today's headlines. Former President Nelson Mandela has been remembered as a selfless leader and tireless fighter for democracy, justice and equal rights for all, as the world marked the second anniversary of his passing over the weekend. Pick-it-up workers are expected to be back at work today following 2 weeks of strike action demanding better salaries. US President Barack Obama has warned against America being drawn into a long and costly ground war in the Middle East. All right, it's over to Kendall now, who'll give you a quick update on what's happening in the sports news. Kendall, what do you have for us in sports?
Good morning, Alicia. Thank you very much. I've got a lot in sports. And before I carry on, let me just say good morning to all of our viewers at home. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. The Proteas are set off on a record-breaking spree, with Captain Hashim Amla having played the slowest innings of 200 balls or more in the history of Test cricket as they look to block their way to a draw. And yet another year goes by and still no South African winner at Africa's major, the Nedbank Golf Challenge, since 2007, as Australian Leishman takes top honours. This as disgruntled players from the EP Kings to hand over a petition to the employers demanding payment and a vote on the management team. And we'll be crossing live to Port Elizabeth at about 10:20 to bring you that petition handing over. And that's it from the sports desk for now. Back to you, Alicia.
Thank you very much, Kendall. Let's go straight into our top story. Former President Nelson Mandela has been remembered as a selfless leader and tireless fighter for democracy, justice and equal rights for all. A special commemoration service was held at the St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town last night to mark the second anniversary of the death of the iconic leader.
Paying tribute to the late statesman, who described himself not as a saint, but an ordinary human being, a sinner who keeps on trying. Nelson Mandela's enormous contribution and dedication to justice and equality, an enduring legacy.
Today, and for generations to come, Madiba will be revered around the world as an inspirational symbol of peace and forgiveness, but also of justice on which they must be based. He remains a beacon of hope for all those everywhere who are still fighting for their freedom and justice. On the international stage, the name Nelson Mandela is synonymous with the universal struggle for justice, human rights, freedom, and democracy. Issues that resonate just as strongly today as they did when he walked from prison 25 years ago.
Madiba's old friend and fellow Nobel laureate, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, joined people from all walks of life in commemorating the second anniversary of Madiba's death.
Archbishop Makgoba said while Madiba rarely expressed himself in religious terms, he has no doubt that Madiba searched not for perfection, but for union through other people with whoever he thought God to be. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town.
One person has been killed and 2 others injured after their vehicle collided with one of the trucks that had been burnt down by protesting community members in Steelpoort near Burgersfort in Limpopo last night. Community members from various villages in the area set alight more than 16 vehicles and blockaded the R555 road with rocks and burning tires. Residents embarked on a violent protest accusing the executive mayor of Sekhukhune District Municipality of interfering with the employment and procurement processes at the mines. A few months ago, the then Mineral Resources Minister Ngwako Ramatlhodi had to intervene to end a violent protest that had brought operations in that area to a halt. Waste management company Pick It Up says it expects all its employees to be back at work today. Johannesburg residents have seen weeks of uncollected refuse after workers embarked on a strike to demand better salaries. The strike ended after Gauteng Cooperative Governance MEC Jacob Mamabolo intervened and brokered a deal between Municipal Union SAMU as well as the management. Mamabolo says the intervention was necessary to ensure the well-being of the city's residents and the environment. The end of the year is on us, and it's that time of the year that involves a lot of travelling and commuting. The focus once more falls on the taxi industry following a taxi crash which claimed the lives of 19 people. The accident occurred on the R28 between Western Area and Vereniging. It's believed the taxi was overloaded, had a tyre burst and the driver lost control and collided with the truck before the taxi burst into flames. Earlier, we were joined by Santaco President Bafana Magagula, who said the commuters are also responsible for their action.
We are disappointed in the first place, and we need to apologize to the public who experienced that difficulty. We discourage overloading, and we appeal to our drivers to refrain from doing so. We also appeal to the passengers to make sure that they are not overloaded in any vehicle. And I think this is what we say every day to avoid such situations, because that tire burst definitely could have been as a result of the overloading. We have embarked on a program with RTMC in the new year. We will definitely be going from one province to another, making sure that we now directly speak to taxi drivers from one province to another. Yeah. And also we want to train the Hlokomela champions. Hlokomela champions are the people who run the program itself. Yeah. We want them to be trained at traffic colleges, not necessarily to be traffic officers, but to be road safety officers.
South Africa has once more made a commitment to the United Nations and World Health Organization to ensure safety on the roads. This includes road safety campaigns that are done by different organizations throughout the festive season. Earlier on, we were joined by Andy Visser, who is the marketing manager for the N3 toll concession, and Mr. Lawrence Barrett, the coordinator at Stay Alert, Stay Alive, who both spoke to us about safety on the road during this festive season.
I think awareness is the most important thing, and I think the more we continue to make people aware of the situation and what is going on out there, the better chance we have of making a difference. I think in terms of our campaigns, it's around partnerships. We like to partner with like-minded organizations, you know, the likes of Imperial Road Safety. We partner with community medical services, and then, of course, all the law enforcement and emergency services along the route. Of vital importance is making sure that everybody is working together, working hand in hand, making sure that it is safe. And so our campaigns are centered around, obviously, not driving under the influence, but beyond that, you know, texting while driving is equally dangerous. Yes. Fatigue is even more dangerous. In fact, fatigue and driving under the influence are pretty much very closely aligned. So there are a number of campaigns that we run around these kinds of issues and making sure that, and really trying to encourage motorists to take regular breaks, plan their trips, and, you know, perhaps not race down the road, you know, take it easy.
We're all in a hurry here from Joburg to get to our holiday and then rush through it and rush right back. That's how we do it here in Johannesburg. But Lawrence, if you could wrap up this discussion. We see here on screen now the most dangerous roads in South Africa during this time. People that will be travelling on these roads, what kind of advice are you going to give them? Firstly, they should be aware that these roads are quite notorious, shouldn't they?
Definitely. The bit of advice that we would like to give at this particular stage is very, very simple. Obviously, never ever drink and drive, or never ever drink and be on the road. It doesn't matter whether you're a pedestrian driver. But the biggest piece of advice that we can give is that every driver must make sure that he is buckled up.
The high number of children drowning in the canals in the Sundays River Valley area of the Eastern Cape has prompted the Water Users Association to hand the matter over to the Human Rights Commission for investigation. The association is responsible for the management and maintenance of over 200 kilometers of canals in the area.
Temperatures in the valley can reach over 40 degrees in summer. Today is no exception. The lure of cool water can be hard to resist, often leading to tragedy.
We thought the children were playing nearby in the area. But then this guy came and said, "My child is in the water and he has drowned." We rushed to go see, but it was too late. They turned me away as the mother of the child and would not let me see. Someone came and said to me, "Grandmother, your grandchildren are in the canals and they have drowned." I went running. They had taken my one grandson out. He was bleeding out of his nose. And I said, "There are two." And they searched and searched. They finally found his body at the end near the drains.
The canals were fenced for a second time in 2008 by the Department of Water Affairs. But it's still not working as a deterrent.
I know it's illegal, it's no place to swim, but we know it's illegal and there's nowhere to swim.
And can you swim?
Yes, I can swim.
Do you feel safe?
Yeah, very safe.
While large sections of the canals remain fenced, that's not the case in areas close to the human settlements.
We are hurt because it's not the first incident like this to happen, but no one seems to care. They built a fence after one incident, but our kids stole the fence and sold it. As a community, we feel the canals must be closed off.
While the Lower Sundays River Water Users Association is doing all they can to secure the canals in certain areas, their efforts have been destroyed by vandalism. So much so that they have now handed over their case to the Human Rights Commission, who are investigating and will compile a report.
The community have marched through the streets in protest. They say authorities don't care about black lives.
They cannot just say these excuses. And they say that they have no money. But when we've done our research, the annual research of a report, there are millions in the happens between 2014 and 2015. But they say that they have no money. This clearly indicates that the black lives do not matter to them.
The Human Rights Commission are investigating the matter and will only comment once its investigation is complete. Educating the community, still a crucial part of the solution. Janine Lee, SABC News, Sundays River Valley.
Minister of Environmental Affairs Edna Molewa says they are cautiously optimistic that COP21, which is currently underway in Paris and France, will produce a legally binding agreement by the end of this week in order to curb the dangerous greenhouse gas emissions. The United Nations Climate Change Conference presented a draft agreement this weekend on the reduction of gas emissions. While it renewed hopes of a fair deal, major challenges still remain, as Tammy Dixon reports.
The COP21 conference enters a very critical stage this week. After years of negotiating a climate deal, countries are now under pressure to conclude a legally binding agreement that will compel each nation to help reduce gas emissions. Expectations are high here after delegates made remarkable progress during their first week of negotiations, presenting a draft agreement.
Our expectation on firstly ensuring that we come out of here, which is our expectation and indeed our mandate, with an agreement of legal force, a protocol, a treaty of whatever shape. But the reality is that there's got to be legal status to what we are agreeing upon here. It must be applicable to all, it must be fair, it must be implementable, and no stepping backward.
One of the sticky issues that separate the countries on the negotiating table is how to finance developing and poor countries to mitigate the rising global temperatures. With $120 million needed for mitigation, rich nations insist that economies that are no longer emerging like South Africa, India, Brazil and China must contribute equally to the fund.
For that differentiation, we don't agree with it, but there's got to be voluntarism. If South Africa, China and whoever perhaps wants to actually contribute in a different manner, there's got to be that. But because situation of country differentiation has not actually been discussed at UN level, it can't just therefore be happening here and concluded.
Scientists have warned that global temperatures are rising, and if they reach 2 degrees Celsius, the world will be plunged into catastrophe. The most to be affected will be poor African countries. Tammy Dixon, SABC News, Paris in France.
Moving abroad, U.S. President Barack Obama has warned against America being drawn into a long and costly ground war in the Middle East. Now, this comes after federal investigators shifted their probe towards terrorism in a deadly mass shooting in San Bernardino in California. The suspects were shot dead after they killed 14 people and wounded 21 others.
On Wednesday, 14 Americans were killed.
In a rare address from the Oval Office Sunday night, U.S. President Barack Obama worked to reassure Americans that his administration is doing all it can to reduce the risk of militant attacks after a couple in California carried out what he called a, quote, new phase of terrorism.
So this was an act of terrorism designed to kill innocent people.
His address comes as mourning continues for 14 people killed by assault-style rifles in San Bernardino, California, and just weeks after 130 people were killed in a series of attacks in Paris. Obama vowed to target Islamic State.
The threat from terrorism is real, but we will overcome it. We will destroy ISIL and any other organization that tries to harm us. Our success won't depend on tough talk, or abandoning our values, or giving in to fear.
He said that he would not be sending ground troops into the fight.
We should not be drawn once more into a long and costly ground war in Iraq or Syria. That's what groups like ISIL want.
Obama's address comes amid growing pressure from Republicans and even some Democrats for a tougher response to Islamic State. Now that the San Bernardino shootings have raised fears among Americans about the threat of more attacks at home.
Well, it's time for a quick ad break, and after that, Kendall will be standing by with your sports news. Do stay with us.
Media Monitor, your weekly media news review program.
It was squashed some few months back, but obviously this is something that is going to hang around Praveen until it is actually dealt with. If he didn't know, then he wasn't doing his job.
In it, she described how the man's hair was frozen, although the man has no hair.
Is anybody volunteering to go to jail for him? That is not how the law works.
This particular matter makes us really look like a serious banana republic.
Unpacking headlines and giving analysis on topical issues. Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News channel.
Good morning and welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamati and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Now, players from the EP Rugby are due to hand over a petition to the union's management declaring their unhappiness with the latest developments at the union. They're dissatisfied with the non-payment of players, the intervention by the South African Rugby Football Union and the postponement of the annual general meeting that was due to be held last weekend. They've now declared that they're going to withhold their services until that AGM is held and matters rectified. For the latest on the story, we now cross live to Port Elizabeth, where reporter Lerato Tipa is standing by. Good morning, Lerato. Please tell us what is going on there.
Well, a very good morning. We're broadcasting live outside the EP Kings offices where the players are standing outside. The gates have been closed. We're not allowed to go inside as yet, but they do have a petition that they're going to hand over to management. They really are dissatisfied. I mean, you can understand no payment for the past 2 months and also instability within the union as well. But joining me this morning is, I guess, a man who understands even more better than I am. His name is Kevin Laters, and he's a player. And what he wants to really do this morning is to really play out and underline what the petition is going to entail. Kevin, can you just take us through what this petition says and what you're proposing by this petition?
Okay, so Eastern Province Rugby Union, and this is our player petition. It's a collective player statement in which about 32 players have signed, and we've all agreed and adhered to what is ever stipulated in this. I'll read it as follows. I hereby confirm that I'm joining the Eastern Province Rugby Funding Petition and Rugby Player Strike. I will not be prepared to work for Eastern Province Rugby P2I Limited, Eastern Province Rugby Union, or Southern Kings P2I Limited, SA Rugby P2I Limited, or SORU, acting on behalf of SANZA or EPRU, or any associated companies until such time as there's an annual general meeting or extraordinary special general meeting of the EPRU, in order that the order of the business is as follows. Point number 1. An irrevocable pledge by EPRU and SORU that all players' outstanding salaries and benefits are fully paid up on or before the 18th of December 2015. Point 2. A vote by member clubs in favour or not in favour of the current Eastern Province Rugby Union Executive Committee on or before the 12th December 2015. Point number 3. A credible and competent rugby turnaround specialist to be permitted to present proposals of sustainability funding module in association with the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan Municipality on or before Friday the 11th December 2015. Point 4. A vote of confidence by the Eastern Province Rugby Union clubs in the new proposal and administration and management of leadership to take place on or before the 12th December 2015.
As you can hear, that is a petition that's being signed by the players. They are really adamant that they're not going to play or they're not going to even work with EPRU until this petition is received and their grievances are heard. You'll understand also that last week SORU released a statement saying they're going to pay the players by this week, and also they've got a turnaround strategy. They've employed a new coach, Dion Davids, for the Super 16. But with all that said, the players are still dissatisfied, saying even with the new coach, with the proposed salary being played this week, they will not play because they want an annual general meeting to be held first. And then once the meeting takes place, then they can take the way forward. So from PE, the players are standing outside waiting for management, and until this petition is signed and received, they will not play anymore for the EP.
Well, thank you very much, Lerato. That was Lerato Tipa, report out in Port Elizabeth with Scrum Half Kevin Laters, giving the demands that the players have got that they'd like to present to their management, who, as you can see, have kept the gates locked. And it seems like they're not quite ready to receive that petition. More about that a little later. We've got a guest in studio we're going to chat with about what's been going on down there, as well as other things as well, all to do with sports. Now, South Africa are on a mission to salvage a draw from what were near impossible odds when the hosts India declared on 267 for 5. That's 267 for 5 in their second innings, setting the Proteas a massive total of 481 runs to win. Now, blocking their way to new records, they've been resolute and stubborn in defence. At the crease, we had AB de Villiers and Vilas, and the score a little while ago was 131 for 5 after 132 overs. We've got live pictures that we're going to bring you from Delhi. Right now, as you can see, we've got a very interested and very resolute-looking AB de Villiers, as well as Vilas, looking to see if they can block their way to a draw.
You need to wear your glasses. I need to have something that will make me see through the haze a bit from here. Well bowled. It's one of his great strength. Quick in the air.
Right, as you can see, it's quite an interesting scenario we're looking at out there in Delhi, with the Proteas seeing if they can actually get themselves to a draw. Some 90-odd overs they needed to make sure that they stay at the crease for. Now, with all that's been happening over the weekend, and how better to wrap it all up than to have Jody Hendricks in studio with us, and he's going to go through as much of it as we possibly can in the time that we've got left. Good morning and welcome back to Newsroom.
Thanks, Keno.
Let's start with the Proteas, the pictures that we just saw now. It's been called a blockathon by some in the media.
Yeah, and they've got, I think, just more than an hour to do so with 5 wickets in hand. So I think they're playing for the no result. They've lost
the series already. And I think, as you know, they went into the test series as the best test team in the world. India was number 3, and India's really come back and, you know, put South Africa on the back foot. I must say, however, Kendall, I was really disappointed at some of the pitches that we've seen in the series, and I know that the International Cricket Council came out and said that some of it were really substandard, but also it has to go to the failure of our batsmen who couldn't adapt. Our bowlers, I think, did fairly well. We got out India for cheap totals at times, then our batsmen didn't come up.
No, true that. But one batsman who seems to have made quite a bit of an impression, especially looking what he's done and yesterday, was Themba Bavuma.
Finally, when he got his chance in the last test, he's been there the whole series, and finally he was given a go in this 4th test. And I think, you know, he showed that he's got the mettle. He's played 1 test before against Zimbabwe, so I think definitely a player for the future, and also showing, you know, some of his teammates that, you know, I can do this if I'm given the opportunity.
With that said, we also had Hashim Amla playing himself into a record of like the slowest 200-odd balls. He's the slowest that anybody's ever played in cricket.
Interestingly enough, this morning I heard that him and Abid de Villiers also now share the partnership for the longest partnership in Test cricket. So it just shows that there's no intent from the batsman side. They don't want to lose their wickets. They're not even playing attackingly, so they're just going for the draw so that they can salvage something out of this game.
Is this cricket?
It is cricket, but, you know, there's different forms of cricket. Obviously, the ideal is to get the result within 4.5 days. But South Africa, I think they're playing for pride now. They want to get back on the plane as soon as possible back to South Africa and start preparing for England.
All right, now let's move on to other news that made headlines over the weekend. The South African football fraternity is overjoyed, over the moon by the fact that we've really got a good chance of getting into the Olympics. The under-23s are through to the semi-finals. And but it seems like Algeria is really happy to be seeing South Africa on the other side as opposed to Senegal. Do we have a chance to beat them?
Well, what we need to do, Kendall, is 3 teams in this tournament can qualify for the Olympic Games next year. So we just need to make sure that we are, even if we're 3rd, just make sure that we get to the Olympics. Actually, over the weekend, I was watching some of the highlights of the 2000 Olympics where the under-23s beat Brazil. And, you know, I think this team, we really have the players that can go and if we qualify for the tournament, I think some of them can go on and make some big names. But, you know, they left it a bit late against Tunisia, the 85th minute. Maybe there was a few chances early in the game, but I think going forward, we just need to make sure that we get the results that we need, even if we're playing against favourites like Algeria.
No, very good. Now, moving on to other news, the 7th series has kicked off, and the 2 big surprises, really, in fact, the big surprise is the United States. I mean, are they really a surprise, 1 and 2? Because they've just finished off, picked up where they finished off last season. They won London, and now they beat New Zealand twice and South Africa in the same weekend.
The USA, for me, is probably the most improved team on the 7th circuit this year. And like you said, to beat New Zealand twice, I don't even think South Africa's done that in 1 weekend. So I think they're really a team to watch out for. Also, England, who played in the final, lost to Fiji, but they're also going to be a team to watch in this coming series and also in the Olympic Games coming up. But I think the USA, with players like Perry Baker, you know, there we see the try that he scored, absolutely phenomenal and definitely one of the teams to watch. And now also in the top 4 after 1 tournament.
No, fantastic stuff by the United States, and we all know that the 15-man rugby is now going pro, so definitely something to look out for next year, and maybe even sooner than the 18 months that some people give them.
I think, and this is maybe something that South Africa can learn from the USA, is that they are investing a lot. We've brought in some of our 15-man players now. I think this weekend in Dubai, Francois Hougaard and Johan de Jong didn't do badly. At times they were a bit exposed, you know, with experience, but I think also the fact that we lost South Africa in our first game was also a big setback. But being the defending champions in Dubai, we'd have expected to at least make the semi-finals.
Now, before I let you go, Jody, can't let you go without commenting on what's been going on down in the Eastern Province with the Kings. Do you think they'll get their house in order anytime soon?
I really hope so. I became aware of this problem, Kendall, in the last weeks of the Currie Cup, when one of the administrators of one of the clubs is saying, listen here, our players, we're not getting paid. There's no communication with our management. And I think for me, there's one big problem, that's Cheeky Watch, and he doesn't even want to admit that there's a problem at the Kings. I think if they can get, you know, if they can address the problem with him or let him step aside so that EP Kings can go forward. They've appointed Dion Davids now as a coach, but like the players, Kevin later said, now they don't want to play, so it's no use having a coach if you don't have players that want to play. And Kendall, over 2 months, they've got time to get the house in order, because that's when the Super 18 starts.
Okay, now we certainly hope that they do that, because we've all been looking forward to having them join the Super Rugby fraternity.
They've had 3 years to prepare, and to be at this stage of this game without players wanting to play, a coach just being appointed is not ideal.
No, fantastic. Jody Hendricks, thank you so much for coming through again. That's
you.
Jody Hendricks, our sports analyst, helping us to get a grip on all that's been happening over the last 48 hours or so. Now we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Eben Janssen standing by has got more news and analysis.
In Africa, technology has created many new ways of doing things.
ICT is an increasingly important part of everybody's life.
It's being used in education, for social media, and now for farming too.
The best thing about internet for a farmer is that we get to share information.
On Network, we give you all the important African technology and social media news. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time, only on SABC News.
Controlesa is actually stirring the pot here.
I'm sure they've been consulted as Controlesa. They did not see a snake. Now that in certain areas there are certain benefits that might possibly be accruing, there is a snake, now we need to reverse the process.
I agree, but it is not above the sovereignty of the people. The very same court you're talking about.
The sovereignty of the people, probably you should explain that to me.
The sovereignty of the people is above everything.
It is not proper the way facts are presented to the public. Are you in contact with Khosekgolo Motshodi?
He was kicked out by the court because he wanted to be amicus curiae.
For your weekly dose of all things legal, join Dumile Mateza every Sunday at 2 p.m. only on SABC News Channel.
This is Newsroom. Welcome back. Time for us to shift the focus to what's happening on the African continent. Let's just take a quick look at our top stories. Rwandan President Paul Kagame says he will decide still whether to seek a third term in office. A referendum allowing a constitutional change to allow President Paul Kagame to run for office again is expected to take place later this month. However, the United States has called on Kagame to set an example to the region and step down at the end of his term in 2017. Lawmakers from Libya's rival parliaments have reached a joint agreement in Tunisia. However, they've dismissed a United Nations proposed deal aimed at ending the conflict. Government spokesperson Ibrahim Amash announced that a separate deal was struck with the Islamist government to avoid foreign intervention. Libya slid into turmoil following the 2011 toppling and killing of Muammar Gaddafi. The United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon yesterday condemned a triple suicide bombing on an island in Lake Chad. The attack killed more than 27 people and injured dozens more. The attack has been blamed on Boko Haram jihadists. Officials found that 3 young girls were responsible. And the Seychelles is set to head into a second round of presidential elections on the 16th of December. This comes after all 6 candidates failed to secure 50% share of the vote. The Indian Ocean nation of 115 islands and 93,000 people went to the polls on the 3rd of December. In a 3-day vote, 71-year-old incumbent President James Marshall won nearly 48% of the vote there. Now, this year's Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, the FOCAC Summit, has come to an end, with all parties calling it a great success over the weekend. The summit, held in Johannesburg, was the second of its kind and aims at improving relations with China and 50 African countries, as well as establishing diplomatic ties with China and the Commission of the African Union. At the start of the summit, China committed $60 billion in investment and development aid to the continent. Now, joining us is Chief Economist at Investment Solutions, Lesiba Motata. Very good morning to you, Lesiba. Always nice to have you with us on a Monday.
How's it?
Nice to have you.
Fokak, just before we get into the detail, what was your overall impressions of the summit that ended over the weekend?
It was a great success. China has remained resolute in being an alternative finance source for Africa, but also the marriage between Pretoria and Beijing, it's much more cemented. The deals that got announced, leading to this outcome, even prior to that, we're talking numbers around $90 billion just with South Africa alone. Different deals in different sectors, including power generation, which is all a good thing. I think it's a beautiful outcome that there's an alternative source of finance, and South Africa seems to be harnessing this relationship in a big way.
Now, yesterday I read some of the analysts talking about this relationship being incompatible, that China brings a dominant technological perspective, whereas Africa is in need of more basic development before that kind of smart technology. How do you view this?
Yeah, so it is a little imbalanced in that China is a very developed economy relative to the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, for example. But those things are good because technologies, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to sit and think outside the box and create something that takes us a long time, while we could harness a specific technology that's already in existence. In that way, you cut down the value chain of production, you make it quicker, and all what should matter is how does it add up to the bottom line, how does it add into output production, which I think the Chinese seemingly have that aspect. Not to say that the relationships are all hunky-dory. There's lessons that can be learned. We could harness some of these results differently in that China dominates. They bring their own labor, outcomes that needs to be considered.
The financial pledge, of course, that the Chinese President Xi Jinping made grabbed all the headlines. It's going to be the 60 billion that's going to be made available in aid and other add-ons. What kind of developments do you think we'll see in the short term on the back of this?
So the thing that's very clear about the Chinese, they're looking for resources. And if you look at the outcome in terms of new countries that are finding mineral deposits, they're finding new oil reserves, they're mainly in sub-Saharan Africa. So I'll imagine most of that announced number will find its way into oil and gas, will find its way into power generation, it will find its way into rail projects, but mainly in the resource sector, where you'll find that China has a direct benefit for its own development needs.
Coinciding with this, the latest Deloitte Africa Construction Trends Report has just been released as well. What were the key findings and the major, let's call it, progress sectors in this report?
It's quite a comprehensive report. I think it's a good one. They do the whole of Africa, and they look in a particular month, the actual projects that are happening on the ground. In other words, those where you're finding nuts and bolts and construction vehicles that are going around to build. They could be building energy and oil projects. They could be in transport, in other words, rail, or some road infrastructure. It could be in healthcare. It could be in real estate. It could be in education. So they do the whole outcome. And what's noteworthy there is that the transport situation, the transport sector, is the one that dominates in terms of growth. Countries are building railway lines. They are building roads. They're building infrastructure that allows for ease of movement in terms of bulk trucks, etc., which is all really a good thing. It's happening mainly in the central part of Africa. There you find that all projects that were identified in that report, about 65% of them are actually in the central part of Africa, followed by the eastern side. Admittedly, in the west, you'll imagine that it's all about oil, it's all about that kind of sector.
And they're taking a little step backwards, one would say. But worldwide, there are essentially four drivers of demand behind infrastructure investment, and governments need to balance these four and the drivers in their planning. Just talk us through that.
Yeah, so what is noteworthy is that the source of finance for these projects are coming from mainly the government sector and from the international development finance agencies, so like your IMFs, European Development Bank. They get to finance some of these projects. What is lacking is private sector participation.
Yeah.
In fact, at the whole, it's less than 5%, which is a telling outcome that there remains an opportunity for investment in all these sectors, particularly in the rail transport sector, that you find that sources of finance needs to be sourced from the private sector, because on a standalone, amongst those listed as funders, China stands out. It's less than 10% source of funding for all these projects that we're talking about.
That's very, very interesting. Just Africa, we constantly hear that 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies on the planet is in Africa, and Africa is set to boom, and all developing economies have quite a rosy outlook, except South Africa. Why is that?
Yeah, so 2 points with that, right? Let's start by saying these fastest growing countries in Sub-Saharan Africa used to be the expectation.
Yeah.
But Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, the ASEAN countries are beginning to be the fastest growing because they have embraced this whole reform.
Yeah.
Because oil has impacted Africa in a big way.
Yeah, this is a very interesting graphic here also. Just point that one out.
You could, yeah. So the countries, so they were the fastest growing, and you can see investment has been concentrated in the central part of Africa, especially around power generation with that Congo water generation and also electricity production. So these are important sectors, but South Africa still dominates. I mean, those numbers are much more, they're bigger, right? Yeah. It dominates the sub-Saharan African situation.
It talks about scale, doesn't it?
Scale, but its growth rate has moderated, but we remain sophisticated, advanced, and much more diversified.
Yes.
While we are not participating with 10% growth that is seen in Ethiopia, and I believe we can get to those levels and we can learn, but you know, they're coming from a very low base. Ethiopia is less than $30 billion in size.
In real terms, then, which are the stars on the continent right now, the countries?
The countries. It will be Ethiopia, right, which is in the east. It will be Kenya, which also is in the east. It will be Mauritius.
Yeah.
In fact, the minister there, the finance minister, talked about how they will achieve full employment by 2020.
Wow.
They're actually building half a dozen cities, so they're doing hectic things.
Yeah.
So the
Tanzania also one of those?
It's all in there in the
all
east.
in the east.
Because they're importing oil. So these are the stars. On here, there's a lot of challenges. Fiscal problems.
Yes.
You know, in Angola, for example, they had to revise their budgets much lower. Sub-Saharan Africa here also benefiting, but we can do much more.
We can do much more and we can do much better. Hopefully on the back of all the good news of the last week or so, we'll be able to build that. But Lesiba, fantastic to have you with us as always. Lesiba is with us every Monday morning. He brings a hard edge to business on the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you.
We'll see him again next week. He's the chief economist with investment solutions here in South Africa. Now, one of the issues, of course, we've dealt with on the continent is Ebola, and it really shook us when the first case was reported in a small village in Guinea. More than 11,000 people died from the illness. But as we go into the new year, it's important to look at the progress that's been made following the deadly epidemic and what the situation is right now. Now, last week, I spoke with the World Health Organization's representative in South Africa, Dr. Sarah Louise Barber, and I asked her what the current situation is in Liberia following a cluster of 3 confirmed cases of Ebola.
There was a new family cluster reported at the end of November, and this was, in fact, after Liberia had declared the outbreak over in September. The investigation is still underway. It was a young boy, a 15-year-old boy. His brother and his father tested positive. And we're still investigating to try to understand how they contracted Ebola. It's not completely clear. They were not in contact with any active cases. However, it is a good sign that Liberia's surveillance systems are strong and picking up these cases. About 150 people have been identified as contacts of this particular family cluster and are being monitored closely.
If you had to give us an overview as to where we are in the fight against the dreaded disease, what would that look like?
Well, there's been an enormous amount of support and effort to the West African outbreak. Liberia, as mentioned before, this is the second time it first declared the outbreak over in May, and the second time in September. However, in Liberia, as well as Sierra Leone and Guinea, the surveillance systems remain very strong. In Guinea, they have not reported a case in the past few weeks, and they've started the countdown, the 42-day countdown, after which, if they have no new cases, they will declare the outbreak over. And Sierra Leone celebrated on early November 7th, I think it was, where they did declare the outbreak over in Sierra Leone. So things are looking very good in West Africa. However, this new outbreak, this new family cluster in Liberia indicates that we still have to keep up our surveillance systems. We have to be on alert, and we cannot be complacent.
Now, a fresh clinical trial of a new Ebola vaccine has found that it's quite well tolerated and safe to use for adults, not only in Mali where this took place, but West Africa and in the US. Will we soon see an easily accessible vaccine that's available?
We certainly hope so. There are actually 2 vaccine candidates in the most advanced stages of clinical trials, what we call the phase 3 clinical trials. So these candidates have already been evaluated in terms of their safety in humans, in terms of their ability to generate an immune response in humans. However, the phase 3 clinical trials, or these large-scale trials of thousands of people to determine efficacy, are still underway. So we still are waiting for the data for these 2 vaccine candidates. And what we do tend to do in these phase 3 clinical trials, we're evaluating whether or not the incidence rate, the number of new cases in the vaccinated group, in comparison to the unvaccinated group. So we do actually need new cases to be able to evaluate these vaccines. However, the current data are very good, they're very positive, and the pharmaceutical manufacturers have agreed to ramp up production in the case that these vaccines are evaluated as efficacious, and we can start with the large-scale implementation of vaccination.
Now, we have large numbers of survivors, more than 15,000, some would say, who now need some medical and others would say psychological support. What are the plans that we are putting forward to help the survivors?
This is a critical question. We're seeing thousands of survivors in this West African outbreak. It's unprecedented. And we're seeing their needs in 3 main areas. The first is individual support. Many of these people have lost family members, if not in some cases their whole families. So they need counseling, individual counseling, to be able to overcome their grief. The second area is working with the communities so that these people can be integrated back into their communities. They're facing stigma, they're facing discrimination. In some cases, we have orphans, children who have lost both parents to Ebola. So we need to work with the communities to make sure that they accept these survivors, they understand that they are not under risk of infection, and that they're fully integrated back into the communities. The third area is about material and financial support. In some cases, these Ebola survivors have undergone large-scale treatment, long treatments. They've lost their jobs. Many cases, their physical possessions have been destroyed because they were infectious. So there's a process of trying to help them in getting reestablished and making sure they have the basic necessities they need to get their feet back on the ground.
Talking about the survivors, a number of them are complaining now about eye problems or problems with sight, for that matter. What does that tell us about the disease, and what are we learning as we're going along?
Well, many viruses have long-term effects, and these long-term effects can be similar to the original disease, or they can be a little bit different. In this particular case, we are seeing long-term effects of Ebola that we've never seen before, simply because we have so many survivors from the West Africa outbreak. So we're seeing that some individuals, as you're mentioning, have eye problems, joint pains have been reported, headaches, and other chronic conditions, perhaps related also in part to any pre-existing illnesses that they had. So this is really simply the manifestation of a very severe disease and the body trying to cope with recovery.
Now, visibly pregnant girls in Sierra Leone have been banned from attending school and even writing exams. This according to the latest report by Amnesty International. Earlier this year, this ban was made as an official government policy by the Sierra Leone's Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. The Human Rights Commission of Sierra Leone has criticized this approach as discriminatory against pregnant girls. Now, to talk to us a little bit more about this, we are joined from Dakar this morning via Skype by Amnesty researcher in West Africa, Sabrina Mahtani. A very good morning to you, Sabrina. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Sabrina, just tell us, why has this ban then been implemented for pregnant girls, especially in Sierra Leone?
Well, in April, as Sierra Leone is preparing to allow children to go back to school after 9 months of school closure due to the Ebola outbreak, the ministry came up with this policy banning visibly pregnant girls from attending school and sitting exams. Now, this has been a practice in Sierra Leone before, but it was sporadic and informal, and the ministry has now enforced and made this a formal practice in Sierra Leone. The policy is discriminatory and based on moral views, very negative views. The Minister of Social Welfare, for example, told us that he would not allow his daughter to be in a classroom with a pregnant girl. There is this idea that pregnant girls will be a negative influence on other girls and encourage them to get pregnant.
Are these girls allowed to come back to school after they've given birth? And if so, are the dropout rates quite high?
The girls are allowed to go back to school after they've given birth, but there's very little support in terms of provision for childcare or other kinds of support. And many girls we spoke to said that they would rather sit their exam when they're pregnant, when they're able, because they fear once they have a baby, it will be very difficult for them to actually go back to school.
And do we know at what stage during a pregnancy are these young women then turned away from the schools?
Well, so the ministry has said they're banning visibly pregnant girls. Now, this is obviously a very difficult kind of line. I mean, some girls may look pregnant but may not actually be pregnant. And we have documented in our report how this ban has been enforced in some schools through humiliating and degrading checks of girls. Some girls we spoke to were checked by having their breasts or stomachs felt or even made to take pregnancy tests. And that's why we are calling on the government of Sierra Leone to issue a directive to all schools, making it very clear that checking girls for pregnancy is a violation of their human rights.
And tell me about the reaction from the community in general, especially parents in this case. What are they saying?
Well, some parents are very disappointed because, of course, they want their children to have as much of an education and an opportunity as possible. And so this is very difficult. Many civil society groups in Sierra Leone have come out very strongly against this policy. You mentioned the Human Rights Commission, and in fact, some CSOs have come together to form campaigns against this. In fact, in 2004, when the war ended in Sierra Leone, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission said that this practice of exclusion of girls from education was discriminatory and archaic. Now, Sierra Leone is now preparing to move on for another crisis, the Ebola outbreak, and it risks leaving almost 10,000 girls behind who are the future of Sierra Leone, the future lawyers, the future doctors, which Sierra Leone desperately needs. So we really hope the government will reconsider and try and change this policy immediately.
Sabrina, thank you very much for giving us that update. That is Amnesty International's West African researcher, Sabrina Mahtani, telling us about the fate of young women who are turned away from schools once they are found to be pregnant. Let's take a quick look at the front pages from around the African continent. We'll start in Swaziland. The Observer reports that maize prices have gone up by more than 50% in some parts of the country in the informal market as drought ravages most areas, leaving farmers unable to plant their yearly crop. Then we move to Namibia, where the Namibian reports that the Namibia Airports Company has trained 21 rescue and firefighting personnel in a bid to promote safety at the country's airports. Then we go north to Nigeria. The Daily Trust says the chairman of the Senate Committee on Local and Foreign Debt, Shehu Sani, has cautioned state's government against collecting unnecessary loans in that country. Well, that's our look at matters on the African continent. Newsroom will be back at the top of the hour with another complete news update. Don't go away.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sports action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Everybody wants to look like Superman, and unfortunately nothing in a bottle, nothing in a capsule form will give you muscle. It's hard work, in fact it's smart work.
It is time sportsmen and women realize that supplements may be contaminated with banned substances and that this can affect their health in the long term.
The only way a supplement can be regarded as safe from banned substances is if the entire supplement batch is tested and cleared by an accredited anti-doping laboratory.
Join me on Health Talk every Saturday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. as we unpack current health stories.
We make sure to bring you exciting entertainment news on trends. Ayanda, a vibrant South African movie told with love, passion and exceptional acting.
For Ayanda, at least, it says that we are heading in the right direction. South African films are growing and they are heading in the right direction to become international movies.
The Urban Art Festival artists brought back colour to old buildings of Johannesburg with their spray cans.
Festival to promote graffiti in Johannesburg and also to promote the Johannesburg inner city. But it brings a number of international artists out, and then they paint with our local artists and they paint throughout the inner city.
We even give you tips on making healthy and fruity cocktails.
Low carbs, fun cocktails for the summer.
Join Refulo Muilwa every Friday for that 1 hour weekly dose of art and entertainment news at 9 p.m. on Trends.
The judge slammed corruption in both the private and public sector. Referring to irregular and wasteful government expenditure, he said it could no longer go on.
The high-profile corruption scandal has dominated Spain's headlines in recent weeks. The scandal touching a nerve as Spain emerges from its downturn after a slew of corruption cases involving politicians and the king's sister.
Tourism is a vital part of the economy. It contributes about 5% to the country's GDP and is a significant contributor to various industries such as food production, retail and transport.
For all your business news, stay tuned to your favorite channel, SABC News, at 1 Monday to Friday.
It's now 1100 hours and this is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I am Alicia Jali. We're broadcasting live from our studios here in Auckland Park, and we're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Let's take a quick look at today's headlines. Former President Nelson Mandela has been remembered as a selfless leader and tireless fighter who fought for democracy, justice and equal rights for all as the world marked the second anniversary of his passing over the weekend. Pick-it-up workers are expected to be back at work today following 2 weeks of strike action in demand of better wages. U.S. President Barack Obama has warned against America being drawn into a long and costly ground war in the Middle East. All right, and Kendall now is standing by to give us a quick update on what's happening in sports. Kendall, what's interesting and happening in sports today?
No, if you were watching the previous hour, there's quite a lot happening down in Eastern Province where the Kings are out to try and get there. Some of their problems sorted, but more about that a little later. Let me greet our viewers at home first. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. The Proteas have set off a mission block, defending their way to a draw against an increasingly frustrated India. And yet another year goes by and still no South African winner at Africa's major, the Nedbank Golf Challenge, since 2007, as Australian Leishman takes top honours. And disgruntled players from the EP Kings are waiting to hand over a petition to their employers demanding payment and a vote on the management team. And that in a nutshell is what we've got for you in the sports. Back to you, Alicia.
Thank you so much. Kendall returns much later on with a complete sports bulletin, and this is our top story. Former President Nelson Mandela has been remembered as a selfless leader and tireless fighter who fought for democracy, justice and equal rights for all. A special commemoration service was held at the St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town last night to mark the second anniversary of the death of the iconic leader.
Paying tribute to the late statesman, who described himself not as a saint, but an ordinary human being, a sinner who keeps on trying. Nelson Mandela's enormous contribution and dedication to justice and equality, an enduring legacy.
Today, and for generations to come, Madiba will be revered around the world as an inspirational symbol of peace and forgiveness, but also of justice, on which they must be based. He remains a beacon of hope for all those everywhere who are still fighting for their freedom and justice. On the international stage, the name Nelson Mandela is synonymous with the universal struggle for justice, human rights, freedom, and democracy, issues that resonate just as strongly today as they did when he walked from prison 25 years ago.
Madiba's old friend and fellow Nobel laureate, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, joined people from all walks of life in commemorating the second anniversary of Madiba's death.
Archbishop Makgoba said while Madiba rarely expressed himself in religious terms, he has no doubt that Madiba searched not for perfection, but for union through other people with whoever he thought God to be. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town.
One person has been killed and 2 others injured after their vehicle collided with one of the trucks that had been burnt down by protesting community members in Steelpoort near Burgersfort in Limpopo last night. Community members from various villages in the area set alight more than 16 vehicles and blockaded the R555 road with rocks and burning tires. Residents embarked on a violent protest accusing the executive mayor of the Sekhukhune district municipality of interfering with the employment and procurement processes at the mines. A few months ago, the then Mineral Resources Minister Ngwako Ramatlhodi had to intervene to end a violent protest that had brought operations in that area to a halt. Waste management company Pick It Up says it's optimistic that its staff will clear the refuse backlog by tomorrow. The company says it's operating at full capacity. Pick It Up employees embarked on a strike 2 weeks ago, leaving the streets of Johannesburg with piles of uncollected garbage. The strike ended on Thursday last week after Gauteng Cooperative Governance MEC Jacob Mamabolo brokered a deal between Municipal Union SAMU and Pick It Up management. Mamabolo says intervention was necessary to ensure the well-being of the city's residents and the environment. The theme on Newsroom today is road safety during the festive season, and as we continue with it, South Africa has once more made a commitment to the United Nations and World Health Organizations to ensure safety on the roads. Now, this includes road safety campaigns that are done by different organizations throughout the festive season. Earlier on, we were joined by Mr. Andy Visser, Marketing Manager of the N3 Toll Concession, and Mr. Lawrence Barrett, Coordinator at Stay Alert, Stay Alive, who both spoke to us about safety on the road during this festive season.
I think awareness is the most important thing, and I think that the more we continue to make people aware of the situation and what is going on out there, the better chance we have of making a difference. I think in terms of our campaigns, it's around partnerships. We like to partner with like-minded organizations, you know, the likes of Imperial Road Safety. We partner with community medical services, and then, of course, all the law enforcement and emergency services along the route. Of vital importance is making sure that everybody is working together, working hand in hand, making sure that it is safe. And so our campaigns are centered around, obviously, not driving under the influence, but beyond that, you know, texting while driving is equally dangerous.
Yes.
Fatigue is even more dangerous. In fact, fatigue and driving under the influence are pretty much very closely aligned. So there are a number of campaigns that we run around these kinds of issues and making sure that, and really trying to encourage motorists to take regular breaks, plan their trips, and, you know, perhaps not race down the road, you know, take it easy.
We're all in a hurry here from Joburg to get to our holiday and then rush through it and rush right back. That's how we do it here in Johannesburg. But Lawrence, if you could wrap up this discussion. We see here on screen now the most dangerous roads in South Africa during this time. People that will be travelling on these roads, what kind of advice are you going to give them? Firstly, they should be aware that these roads are quite notorious, shouldn't they?
Definitely. The bit of advice that we would like to give at this particular stage is very, very simple. Obviously, never ever drink and drive, or never ever drink and be on the road. It doesn't matter whether you're a pedestrian driver. But the biggest piece of advice that we can give is that every driver must make sure that he is buckled up.
As the end of the year gets upon us, South Africans are urged to look out for dangers on the roads, as this time of the year involves a lot of travelling and commuting. The focus once more falls on the taxi industry following a taxi crash which claimed the lives of 19 people. The accident occurred on the R28 between Western Area and Vereniging. It's believed the taxi was overloaded and then it had a tire burst and the driver lost control, colliding with a truck before the taxi burst into flames. Earlier we were joined by Santaco President Bafana Magagula, who said the commuters are also responsible for their action.
In the first place, and we need to apologize to the public who experienced that difficulty. We discourage overloading and we appeal to our drivers to refrain from doing so. We also appeal to the passengers to make sure that they are not overloaded in any vehicle, and I think this is what we say every day to avoid such situations, because that tire burst definitely could have been as a result of the overloading. We have embarked on a program with RTMC in the new year. We will definitely be going from one province to another, making sure that we now directly speak to taxi drivers from one province to another. And also we want to train the Hlokomela champions. Hlokomela champions are the people who run the program itself. We want them to be trained at traffic colleges, not necessarily to be traffic officers, but to be road safety officers.
As we continue with the theme of road safety during the festive season, every 12 minutes someone dies in a motor vehicle crash, and every 5 seconds a crash occurs in South Africa. The Automobile Association of South Africa estimates that the cost to South African economy from road crashes is about 52 billion rand. Every day, over 40 people die in road crashes, and 25 people end up permanently on wheelchairs due to road crashes. And the cost to the economy, the loss of life, skills and human capital is too great to ignore. Earlier, AA spokesperson Leighton Beard joined us from our Pretoria studios, and this is what he said.
I think there are a lot of people in the country who do care about the fatalities and the injuries on the road. But I'll take you back to something that Lawrence said earlier. He used the word estimates quite a number of times in his interview with you. And I think that's part of the problem, Eben. We, unfortunately, in South Africa don't have reliable statistics to base any campaigns on, or to base the success of any campaigns on. The last reliable statistics we have are from 2011, and even in the World Health Organization's global report on road safety, South Africa had the most outdated road fatality statistics of 180 countries surveyed by the WHO. So I think it's very important for us as a country to go back to the basics and to say this is exactly how many people are dying on our roads. This is exactly how many people are injured on our road. These are the exact numbers of crashes that happen on our road over a given period, because that will give us an idea of where the trouble areas are, where more interventions are needed. So that's definitely something. We do believe that people do care, but I think that there are too many people who don't care, specifically motorists, who don't exercise enough caution, who don't buckle up, who don't make sure that they are driving safe on the road, and that is, of course, a major concern.
Afield, U.S. President Barack Obama has warned against America being drawn into a long and costly ground war in the Middle East. Now, this comes after federal investigators shifted their probe towards terrorism in a deadly mass shooting in San Bernardino in California. 2 suspects were shot dead after they killed 14 people and wounded 21 others.
On Wednesday, 14 Americans were killed.
In a rare address from the Oval Office Sunday night, U.S. President Barack Obama worked to reassure Americans that his administration is doing all it can to reduce the risk of militant attacks after a couple in California carried out what he called a, quote, new phase of terrorism.
So this was an act of terrorism designed to kill innocent people.
His address comes as mourning continues for 14 people killed by assault-style rifles in San Bernardino, California, and just weeks after 130 people were killed in a series of attacks in Paris. Obama vowed to target Islamic State.
The threat from terrorism is real, but we will overcome it. We will destroy ISIL and any other organization that tries to harm us. Our success won't depend on tough talk, or abandoning our values, or giving in to fear.
He said that he would not be sending ground troops into the fight.
We should not be drawn once more into a long and costly ground war in Iraq or Syria. That's what groups like ISIL want.
Obama's address comes amid growing pressure from Republicans and even some Democrats for a tougher response to Islamic State. Now that the San Bernardino shootings have raised fears among Americans about the threat of more attacks at home.
It's time for a quick ad break, and Eben is standing by with more news after that. Do stay with us.
Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
Time now for us to shift our focus, have a more regional look, and we stay with road safety today. Of course, our question today deals directly with that. We are the worst drink drivers in the world. Now, as we head into the festive season, we want to ask of you, how can South Africa keep alcohol off its roads this festive season? That's what we would like you to tell us. What are your views at SABC Newsroom? Now, I can tell you that Tshwane Metro Police Department launched their festive season road safety operations last month. The festive season operations would promote zero tolerance road traffic offences and any criminal activities through ensuring high visibility and effective law enforcement. The focus is to decrease road accidents, fatalities, injuries and road traffic offences over the coming weeks. Now, the Chief of the Tshwane Metro Police Department, Mr. Stephen Gubeni, and from the South African Police Service is General Tommy Mtombeni. A very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers.
Mr. Gubeni, if I can start with you, just tell us where you are with the 2015 campaign. Are you happy with the way things have started this year?
Yes, we are happy with how things have started, but we want to further urge the members of the public to respect the rules of the road and to support the initiative by the law enforcement.
If I can move the focus to the South African Police Service, General, just tell us your preparations for the festive season. We know that South Africa has a problem with alcohol on the roads. Just tell us, are you looking to especially crack down on drink driving this festive season?
Yes, we are ready as we are working in conjunction with the Tshwane Metro Police. The Acting National Commissioner have just put a call to indicate that we have to have a high visibility, which is linked to the issue of having some roadblocks which we have to set in conjunction with our counterparts, which is Metro Polices.
Yeah, I want to ask Chief Ngubeni there to specifically talk about the road to Polokwane. We know there's always massive outflow of traffic towards the north. Are you doing anything differently this year to come to terms with the heavy traffic volumes?
Yes, we are doing a lot to ensure that we have a free flow of traffic on our N1. Remember, we have just graduated over 2,000 new recruits. So we'll be deploying them in all the major intersections towards the N1 to ensure that there's a free flow of traffic and to ensure that all the vehicles that are traveling on that road are roadworthy.
General Mtombeni, you touched briefly on the collaboration that you're having with Metro Police. Tell us a little bit more about that and tell us about your campaigns for the festive season as well.
I would say our campaign for the festive season is that the community, or call to the community, that whenever they are driving, they have to be alert. I can indicate to you the inner city. As they drive towards the inner city, they must see to it that they must check on the robots. along the highways will be there, of which I've indicated that we're collaborating our operations with the Metro Police. And these operations is in line with Operation Fiela, whereupon we'll look on all crimes, and more so, as you have indicated, the drunken driving or reckless and negligence driving, it will be party thereof.
You mentioned a crackdown. We know this is a time when people like to let the hair down a little bit, as it were. You're also going to focus on other substances, drugs, that kind of thing. You'll be quite keen to rid our neighbourhoods of that, one would think.
Yes, of course. Our Operation Fiela is an integrated operation where we involve Tshwane Metro Police, Gauteng Traffic Police, Home Affairs, the PRASA, of which they are responsible for passenger rails, and Telcom, all other role players, those who are assisting us, like the people who deals with the liquor board, so that we have to be in a position to look on holistically how do we deal with the overall of the crime, so that the community in South Africa have to be safe and really safe.
Chief Ngobeni, what are your major concerns as the head of the Tshwane Metro? What are your concerns? We know drink driving is an issue and there'll be high volumes of traffic, but what are your major concerns heading into this busy time?
If you check the stats, you will see that most of the people killed on our roads are the pedestrians. So we are urging the community members to go to the designated pickup areas, which will be your taxi ranks, your bus terminals, to catch their transport to their respective destination. We have, as a department, set up a team that which will be dealing specifically with that, will be arresting all the members of the public found on our freeways. So there will be no one who is allowed on our freeway. We are urging the community to support us in that regard.
Thank you, Chief. Now, in conclusion, General Mtombeni, what is your message, if I may ask, that you're telling South Africans ahead of this festive season? What are the do's and don'ts, and what should people be on the lookout for?
We're urging our community in South Africa to be really good citizens on our roads, to be really very good citizens while we are enjoying our festive seasons. It might be home, it might be when they are going for shopping, because the police will be out in there to look on those people who are not in compliant or those who disregard the laws of South Africa. So I would like to say I wish the South African to have a Merry Christmas and prosperous New Year.
Thank you, gentlemen. I thank you for joining us today. That is the Chief of the Tshwane Metro Police Department, Mr. Stephen Ngobeni, and the South African Police Service, General Tommy Mtombeni. Thank you for joining us and sharing the plan for this month with us. Yes, there will be a crackdown. Don't drink and drive. Please don't drink and drive. It causes all the havoc on our roads. And stick to the speed limits. Stick to the rules of the roads. Simple as that. Now, to continue our theme on road safety in this regional slot, our focus now moves to the province of KwaZulu-Natal. The MEC for Community Safety and Liaison there, Willis Mkunu, says the death of 4 police officers who died in an accident over the weekend in Harding in the southern parts of the province is a major blow to the law enforcement agency. The Crime Intelligence Gathering Unit members were on duty when their light motor vehicle collided with a minibus taxi on the N2. At least 10 people were also injured in the accident. Now, to tell us about the state of readiness in KwaZulu-Natal for the festive season, it's one of the busiest roads, the N through into and out of Durban. The spokesperson of the Department of Community Safety and Liaison, Kwanele Ngalane. A very good morning to you, Kwanele. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning and good morning to all the viewers at home.
Before we get into your plan for the festive season, just tell us about this accident in Harding over the weekend. It's a real blow for the law enforcement agency and the department, really losing some of your members.
Obviously, the MEC for Transport, Community Safety and Liaison in KwaZulu-Natal, MEC Wilson Mchunu, has learned with the shock the accident that took the lives of 4 police officers in Harding. You will also appreciate the fact that in our integrated law enforcement for the festive season, we work together, SAPS, Road Traffic Inspectorate, RTMC, and municipal traffic officials. Therefore, losing a member is a serious blow to us. Never mind when we are losing 4 or more. So it means it's a serious tragedy to the province, but it is not going to deter us. We are going to continue making sure that we soldier on and making sure that we fight all forms of transgressions and lawlessness in the province of KwaZulu-Natal.
Now, that's a mouthful, but last year, KwaZulu-Natal had the most fatal accidents in the country with 249 deaths in 211 crashes. This year, what are we doing to improve on that, or to make sure that people understand the seriousness of the situation in KZN?
Well, obviously, we appreciate the fact that KwaZulu-Natal, when it's holiday period, it's one of the busiest provinces. We've got N3, which is linking the province of KwaZulu-Natal with the Free State, Gauteng and Mpumalanga. We have got the N2 linking Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape, and also the neighboring countries, Mozambique and also Lesotho. So all those are contributing to the volumes of traffic that we are experiencing on our roads. That is why during this festive period, we have ensured that we form what we call an interprovincial law enforcement committee, which is where all provinces are meeting, all our neighboring provinces. The Gauteng, last week there was a meeting in Free State, in Bloemfontein, where we were meeting as all these neighboring provinces to say how to strengthen our borders, how to strengthen the entry and the exit points to our province to ensure that we fight all forms of traffic violations in our provinces. Therefore, we are ready, more than ready as the province of KwaZulu-Natal. We started on the 15th of November, making sure that there's high visibility of police, focusing on drinking and driving, excessive speeding, and also unroadworthy vehicles, and also the verification of documentations, especially to public transport drivers. So we have been on the ground. And on Wednesday, the MEC is going to be in Moy River on the entry to make sure that we intensify our campaign as we're entering on the last phase of our law enforcement campaign. So we want to make sure that all vehicles that are coming and leaving the province of KwaZulu-Natal are stopped and checked so that we satisfy ourselves that everybody who's on the road is in a good condition, everybody who's on the road is driving a vehicle that is permitted to be on the road.
The N3 is one of the dangerous roads in the country. There are also some roadworks that we see that's going to be in place over the festive season. Can you give us a little update on that, and then also tell us, are there any hot spots along the way that you're going to target where people are known to habitually offend?
Well, we have identified many roads which are accident hotspots in the province. R66 between Nongoma and Ulundi, R612 between Kokstad and Franklin, N2 as well. There are stretches on the N2 which have been identified as accident hotspots. There is a N11 between Ladysmith and Newcastle. There is R102. All those roads, we are going to make sure that there is a high visibility of police. There are operations that are going to run 24 hours in those areas which have been identified as accident hotspot, but particularly on the entry as well. Hence, it's a busy national road. There is going to be high visibility of police from local municipalities, SAPS, and Road Traffic Inspectorate. But where there are construction, we urge our people to be patient with one another, keep the safe following distance, and make sure that they adjust their driving habits where there are certain minor rehabilitations that are taking place. But I think from where we are sitting, most of the work has been done on the entry and it's going to be open for traffic. But we know that there are certain parts where there is a regular maintenance. Therefore, we urge motorists to adjust their driving habits and to make sure that they drive cautiously and be patient around those areas.
Kwanele, thank you very much for joining us today. That's the spokesperson for the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Community Safety and Liaison, Kwanele Ngalane, and he says they will be cracking down on all the roads over the festive season. If you engage in any lawlessness or criminality on the roads, you'll be dealt with very harshly. Drink driving will be a massive focus throughout the next month. So all South Africans are asked to do their bit to not be drunk on our roads. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, Kendall Makamate will give us a sports update. It looks as if the Proteas are now going to lose that final test against India, but let's hope they can hang on.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m, then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
Didier Drogba, a footballer from Ivory Coast, was named as the third most influential celebrity in Africa.
Where I saw him display, he's a very nice player. He always make an impact.
Drogba donated his $5 million endorsement fee to the construction of a hospital in Abidjan.
Well, there are some lesser-known football stars in the continent that you haven't met.
Really?
And are deserving of more attention.
I think we will do better.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Good morning and welcome back. My name is Kendall Makamate and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Now, players from the Eastern Province Rugby Union were camped outside the offices of the union's management to hand over a petition declaring their unhappiness with the way things have been going. It's been several months since they've been paid, and they're also unhappy that, about the intervention of the South African Rugby Union, as well as the postponement of the annual general meeting that was due to be held last weekend. Now, earlier this morning, our reporter, Lerato Tipa, was at the scene and got a statement from Kevin Laters, one of the players.
Eastern Province Rugby Union, and this is our player petition. It's a collective player statement in which about 32 players have signed, and we've all agreed and adhered to what is ever stipulated in this. I'll read it as follows. I hereby confirm that I'm joining the Eastern Province Rugby Funding Petition and Rugby Player Strike. I will not be prepared to work for Eastern Province Rugby Pty Limited, Eastern Province Rugby Union, or Southern Kings Pty Limited, SA Rugby Pty Limited, or SORU, acting on behalf of SANZA or EPRU, or any associated companies until such time as there's an annual general meeting or extraordinary special general meeting of the EPRU, in order that the order of the business is as follows. Point number 1. An irrevocable pledge by EPRU and SORU that all players' outstanding salaries and benefits are fully paid up on or before the 18th of December 2015. Point 2. a vote by member clubs in favour or not in favour of the current Eastern Province Rugby Union Executive Committee on or before the 12th December 2015. Point number 3. A credible and competent rugby turnaround specialist to be permitted to present proposals of sustainability funding module in association with the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan Municipality on or before Friday the 11th December 2015. Point 4. A vote of confidence by the Eastern Province Rugby Union clubs in the new proposal and administration and management of leadership to take place on or before the 12th December 2015.
Now, South Africa's mission to salvage a draw in India proved a mission too difficult. They blocked their way to new records, and the Proteas were resolute and stubborn in their defence. But it was not to be, as they lost by 337 runs to the hosts, India. More about that in later sports bulletins. Now, South Africa will have to wait at least another year to see a local winner of the Nedbank Golf Challenge. Australia's Mark Leishman has won Africa's major, played at the Gary Player Golf Club at Sun City with a 19 under par score. Henrik Stenson from Sweden was second, 6 strokes behind Leishman.
Jaco van Zyl started the day as the leading South African player, but he had an up-and-down round. He started with a bogey on the first and an eagle on the second, but then he dropped 5 strokes to par from the 6th hole and tumbled down the leaderboard and out of contention. This opened the door for Britain's Chris Wood to finish third. The championship was a straight contest between Leishman and Stenson. Leishman started the day with a 1-stroke lead and he showed early signs of nervousness. He dropped a shot on the third, opening the door for Stenson, but the big Swede could not capitalize. Instead, he could only manage a level par first 9. After adding a birdie on the 10th, the 2008 winner ran out of steam, and by the 14th, he was 3 strokes behind. Leishman played steady golf after the blemish on the third, with birdies on 7, 9, 10 and 13. After Stenson found the rough on the 15th and dropped a stroke, Leishman made a birdie to go 5 strokes clear. A par on the last sealed the win.
Mark from down under comes up top at Sun City.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be a really tough day. I knew I'd have to play well. He's an awesome player, you know, in the top 10 in the world, and I knew he'd make me earn it, which he did. So I was, you know, really pleased that I could play as well as I did and have a little bit of a buffer there at the end.
Hannes Reineke, SABC News.
Right now, there you had it, that Proteas match. We're hoping to catch the end of it before we actually did anything else, but unfortunately we're going to have to go to weather. Ashwin did it again. He got another 5-4, but like I said, more about all of that in other sports bulletins. Now up next, we'll take a quick break, and we've got Tito Bernardo standing by with the weather.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. So let's have a look what you should expect for the rest of today, as we're seeing hot weather for most parts of South Africa, especially over the Northern Cape province. There's actually a warning issued out by the South African Weather Service indicating really hot weather and possibilities of fires coming in along those parts. And we're expecting rain just along the coastal parts there. There's up to a 60% chance of rain towards KwaZulu-Natal, and then some showers are expected towards some parts of Botswana, going all the way towards Namibia. And temperatures, as I mentioned, really hot conditions coming through. 40 for Pretoria, actually 39 for Pretoria. Gaborone is the one at 40 degrees. 42 for Upington, and we're seeing about a 43 towards Tosca in the northwest province. Temperatures are expected to remain slightly cooler for Kenya, as well as over some parts of Rwanda, going all the way towards Uganda. But then rainy conditions over the central parts of the tropics becoming stronger into places such as the southern regions of the DRC, going all the way towards much of the west. Eastern side are expected to be a bit clearer, and some temperatures are expected to be much warmer over places such as Kigali, now at 26 degrees, Kinshasa 32, Brazzaville is quite hot, 33, but there's also rain that we're expecting along those parts, and also some cooler conditions over much of the eastern sides. No chance of rain for the central and the northern part of Africa, towards Cairo, over Egypt, as well as over most parts of Sudan, Chad, going all the way towards the northern regions. It's going to be in Libya as well. There's no rain coming through for you there. And temperatures are going to be into the lower 20s, and some of them into the upper teens. There's about 18 towards Benghazi, Tripoli 21, and it's generally a warm day towards most parts of Egypt, going all the way towards Syria, as well as much of the Arabic lands there. And then again, in terms of your rainfall towards West Africa, nothing is happening again, except maybe for the coastal regions. There's a small shade and a small possibility of rain, particularly towards Lagos, going all the way into Cameroon. Otherwise, it's going to be quite a clear day. There'll still be clouds here and there, but not much rain should be expected there. Just have a look at Dakar. Maximum of 31, sunny skies that I mentioned, and a layer of clouds coming in towards Bamako, stretching all the way towards Ouagadougou, as well as over Naimi. And if you're going to be in N'Djamena, expect a maximum of just around 32. Your temperatures are getting a bit hotter just along the western side. Lagos is at 38 degrees, very close to 40. Maybe even later into the day, it might reach around 39 degrees. That's all I had for you for the weather, but do stick around. There'll be more here on SABC News.
Before you go,
yeah.
I see a new heatwave warning has just been issued by the Weather Service. For which area, which parts of the country is that?
The Northern Cape, some parts of the Northwest, as well as a bit of the Free State Province. And it's slightly moving towards Gauteng as well. You can already see temperatures for Pretoria at 39 for today. It's quite hot. Last night already was really, really hot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, temperatures are picking up. And I did mention this about 2 weeks ago, or even way back. I said we're expecting more heat waves and these dry and hot conditions throughout December. So we are not really out of the dry spell yet.
That's going to make it tough for people on the roads. We're talking about drink driving on the roads. What's your message to South Africans who have to take the long treks to the coast and so forth over the starting today, really?
Well, of course, number one, obey the rules and just try not to outfox the cops or anybody else. Do not drink. You will get caught, and if you don't get caught, you might lead to an accident that might lead you paralyzed or maybe take somebody else's life. So please abide by the traffic rules. Do not drink, and if you're going to drive long distances, make sure you get the rest in between so that you stay fresh and you stay very, very focused and clear on the roads.
Simonade, thank you very much for that update. Now we've got another story here. Before we kind of wrap up, it's a concerning story from the Eastern Cape. The high number of children drowning in the canals in the Sundays River Valley area of the Eastern Cape has now prompted the Water Users Association to hand the matter over to the Human Rights Commission for investigation. The association is responsible for the management and maintenance of over 200 kilometers of canals in that area.
Temperatures in the valley can reach over 40 degrees in summer. Today is no exception. The lure of cool water can be hard to resist, often leading to tragedy.
We thought the children were playing nearby in the area. But then this guy came and said, "My child is in the water and he has drowned." We rushed to go see, but it was too late. They turned me away as the mother of the child and would not let me see. Someone came and said to me, "Grandmother, your grandchildren are in the canals and they have drowned." I went running. They had taken my one grandson out. He was bleeding out of his nose. And I said, "There are two." And they searched and searched. They finally found his body at the end near the drains.
The canals were fenced for a second time in 2008 by the Department of Water Affairs. But it's still not working as a deterrent.
I know it's illegal, there's no place to swim, but we know it's illegal and there's nowhere to swim.
And can you swim?
Yes, I can swim.
Do you feel safe?
Yeah, very safe.
While large sections of the canals remain fenced, that's not the case in areas close to the human settlements.
We are hurt because it's not the first incident like this to happen, but no one seems to care. They built a fence after one incident, but our kids stole the fence and sold it. As a community, we feel the canals must be closed off.
While the Lower Sundays River Water Users Association is doing all they can to secure the canals in certain areas, their efforts have been destroyed by vandalism. So much so that they have now handed over their case to the Human Rights Commission, who are investigating and will compile a report. The community have marched through the streets in protest. They say authorities don't care about black lives.
They cannot just say these excuses. And they say that they have no money. But we've done our research, the annual research of a report. There are millions in the happens between 2014 and 2015. But they say that they have no money. This clearly indicates that the black lives don't matter to them.
The Human Rights Commission are investigating the matter and will only comment once its investigation is complete. Educating the community, still a crucial part of the solution. Janine Lee, SABC News, Sundays River Valley.
Now moving to concerns abroad, troops and emergency services in northwestern parts of England are being stretched to the limit as they battle to cope with the aftermath of severe storms there. Firefighters were helping to rescue the stranded. They say floodwaters have brought a multitude of dangers there.
These were the scenes in the northwest England city of Carlisle after storms caused widespread flooding across the region. The army joined emergency services to rescue people stranded by the rising waters. The government was due to hold an emergency meeting to coordinate the response in the aftermath. Hundreds of homes have been flooded and thousands of people are without electricity.
I saw the water coming up under the tiles, you know. It's quite frightening.
Horrendous. It's bad. It's terrible. Don't know what to do.
Well, we can take you to a dry street and then we can sort it out from there.
Firefighters helping to rescue the stranded say the floodwaters have brought a multitude of dangers.
The water's contaminated, you've got petrol cars, you've got sewage, so you've got all sorts of diseases. The other thing is hidden stuff underneath the water. You've got wheelie bins, garden fences with spikes on, grids.
Police say one man in London was killed as he was blown into the side of a moving bus, but there have been no reports of any other casualties. Initial figures show more than 340 millimetres of rain fell on the Cumbria region over a 24-hour period. Forecasters say the worst of the storm responsible for the flooding has passed, but there's more wet weather to come.
Yeah, very concerned citizens and scenes from all around the world as climate change is definitely having an effect. Drought here in South Africa, floods in India, floods over in the UK now. But we ask you a direct question today. Today, the holiday really gets underway. School holidays, that is. How can South Africa keep alcohol off its roads this festive season? That's a question we ask you today. We got quite a lot of responses, guys.
All right, starting with Olile Vilankulu says at SABC Newsroom, South Africans must avoid misusing money on alcohol and save for their kids' future. I think that's another option there, Eben.
Sobering.
Matloli Malope reckons SABC Newsroom, SAB needs to stop seeing the festive as business boom and reduce supply, but they're in there for business, isn't it?
That's never going to happen, unfortunately. Sefusha says about deploy more traffic officials on the roads, day and night, assisted by police officers. That is what's happening at the moment.
All right, and Lendros Moyo says traffic officers, they must be strict and avoid corruption. The issue of bribes, even, is always the issue when it comes to the bribing during festive seasons between traffic cops.
It's a simple thing. Don't pay bribes. We shouldn't pay bribes. It's the responsibility of you, the public, to not pay bribes. But Alicia, thank you for joining us today. It was great to have you with us. How did you enjoy the Newsroom show?
Oh, well, I absolutely enjoyed hanging with both of you. Well, thank you so much. I will come visit again soon.
Yeah, I hope so. There's a lot of work going to be happening over the festive season as the news channel continues to roll on. There's not going to be much of a holiday, is there, Kendall?
No, not much. We're going to be working throughout the holidays, so make sure you stay tuned to Newsroom. We are going to be here through fall 4 for the entire rest of the year.
Yeah. On a sad note, South Africa, of course, have just lost the final test against India. They're coming back to South Africa in the next week, and Kendall will keep us updated as to how the Proteas feel. It's going to be a busy summer for them still.
It's going to be a very busy summer. We've got the 26th of December, Boxing Day. The Boxing Day test is back. England are going to be out playing here in South Africa, so looking forward to that, to see how the Proteas pick themselves up from this series.
But Kendall, what was the problem with the Proteas? We know that in rugby they were blaming transformation. What was the problem with the Proteas this time?
They just couldn't get to grips with the pitches they were faced with out in India. And, you know, our bowlers did as best they could. Our batsmen let us down. They really didn't come to the party, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's always tough touring India. And, you know, the most important thing is we love to win here in South Africa, but we need to learn and to accept defeat sometimes. Sometimes you have to be a better loser than a winner, Kendall. And in this case, we were beaten by a better side in those conditions.
Absolutely.
Well, that's where we wrap Newsroom on this Monday. Well, don't forget, stay alert, stay alive on the roads. They're going to be very busy from today onwards. It's going to be a nightmare out there wherever you're traveling, so stay patient. From us here at Newsroom, bye-bye.
Goodbye.